All right, everyone. Appreciate your patience. We're starting a little late. Thank you for attending tonight's Public Safety and Transportation Committee. Tonight is March 8th. We are starting at 6:42. We have four. Angel, could you read the ground rules?
Sure. Good evening again, everyone. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, no one may speak until they're granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click on the participants icon, the participants panel should appear, and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. The chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you are having, or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized.
Thank you, Angel. Now we have a call to order. Do I need a vote for this, Angel, or can we just?
No, you already called it to order.
Perfect.
I'll do the roll call for you now.
Thank you.
Committee members, when I call your name, please answer present. Jose Altamirano.
Present.
Eric Alcancela. Diane Collier.
Present.
Carlos Diaz. Judith Febraro.
Present.
Osendi Garcia.
Present.
Marissa Mack.
Present.
Jessica Morris is excused. Miguel Pava. Dawn Sanders.
Present.
Michelle Wilcher Clement.
Present.
You have quorum.
I'd like to adopt today's agenda. You know, vote for that. We just vote to it.
You just asked if anyone has if any of the members are opposed. If not, it's
Perfect.
adopted.
Any members opposed to adopting tonight's agenda? Raise your hands. No. Okay, let's move forward. Adopting of committee minutes, which I have to get to Angel, probably for the last 6 months. All right. Announcements. The MTA, DOT, New York State DOT, and New York City DOT encourage the public to continue to provide comments on the early outreach process and project for the proposal of Central Business District Holding Program proposal, also known as congestion pricing, prior to April 27th. Information on the CBDTP proposal, including next presentation and public outreach meetings, may be found at the following website. We have that actually on our agenda for tonight. To start the conversation, and then if need be, we can send something for the following month, which still falls within our April 27th. It's hard to hear me. Is everyone having a hard time hearing me?
Yeah, Jose, it's like you're going in
and out.
I'm gonna close the door. All right, let's try again. You guys want to make me raise my voice? Fine. Bronx Bus Network redesign. The MTA announced the newly redesigned Bronx local bus network is set to launch on June 26th. In preparation for these changes, the MTA and DOT are jointly commencing a large-scale public outreach effort to advise customers of the changes that will be implemented. New signage will be added at approximately 450 bus stops, advising customers of the implementation date of the redesigned network. We are actually still waiting for the Manhattan redesign plan, which didn't happen due to COVID. Hopefully it happens soon. We'll talk to Jackie about it in a little bit. Okay, what other announcement do we have? Informational updates. All right, YPD 23rd Precinct, Mr. Gibbons.
Thank you, Jose. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for having me here. Officer Gibbons from the 23rd Precinct Community Affairs. Year to date, we are up citywide 47% in major crime. All 7 major crimes are up quite significantly. Murder is the only one that's actually in the single digits. Citywide, we're up 1.5% in murders, but all the other categories, rape, robbery, felony assault, burglary, grand larceny, and grand larceny auto, we are up significantly. And shootings, we are also up 14.3% citywide. That's 192 shootings this year versus 168 last year. Now, in the 23rd Precinct, for the year, we're up 27% in major crime. And for the 28-day period, for the last 28 days previous to this meeting, we are up 49% in major crime. And the breakdown over that 28-day period is we had 2 murders and we had none last year. We had 3 rapes, we had none last year. Robbery, we were down 35.7%, one bright spot. Felony assaults, down 29.4%, another bright spot. But burglaries up 225% over last year's numbers in the 28-day. Grand larcenies up 100%. Grand larceny auto, we had 6 this 28-day period and none last year. So that's obviously up significantly. And shootings, we didn't have any. We also didn't have any in the 28-day period last year. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when I break things down by category. So again, let's start with the murders. In the 28-day period, we had 2. One was on February 12th. A 56-year-old woman was bludgeoned to death with a hammer by her niece inside her apartment on East 100th Street between 3rd and Lex. You may have read about that in the paper. An arrest was made. No motive is known. The niece lived there with her aunt. Previous history of arguments in the apartment, but nothing violent, certainly nothing to alert us to a potential for extreme violence like this. So very strange circumstances, very tragic incident. Both parties had very lengthy criminal histories, especially the victim, in fact, but a tragedy nonetheless, but we still don't have a motive. And then the second murder was on February 16th. And I'm sure you read about this one in the paper. A 35-year-old woman was killed inside her apartment, Lexington Houses, by her cousin, another family homicide, family-related homicide. Again, motive is unknown. The suspect was arrested in this case, but he did not choose to speak with our detectives regarding any pertinent information that would have helped us understand more about why this crime occurred. But if you read about it in the paper, there are other circumstances to it you may be aware of. The deceased was placed inside a plastic container, and deposited in the Bronx by the suspect along with a fellow co-conspirator. Sad. Moving on, rapes, we had 3. One was a family relative. One was a statutory rape. A 27-year-old had sex with a 15-year-old victim, and another was a family friend. The relative and the family friend both forced themselves on the victim. In robberies, we had 9, down from 14 last year. So that's a step in the right direction. 2 were domestic violence related, which is down. Usually domestic violence accounts for, a third or almost half of our robberies. 2 were at knife point. One was a city bike. One was a drug deal gone bad. One was a taxi driver robbed, and one was a delivery guy robbed. Felony assaults also down. Another one of our bright spots. 12 this year versus 17 last year. 4 were domestic violence related. So let's hope these trends continue, because again, domestic violence usually accounts for about half of our felony assaults. So the drop in robberies and felony assaults are occurring because we can hope, we don't know for certain, as we've discussed before, these things happen behind closed doors and often go unreported, but we're hoping that the domestic violence may be dropping because of circumstances in society at large. Hopefully, people are coming out more, going back to work more, earning money again. I don't know, but that's speculation. I'm just hoping. Among our felony assaults, we had 2 knife fights. We had fights that became violent. One person was pistol whipped. One was beaten with a cane. One was beaten with a metal chair. So these are our felony assaults. As I mentioned, we had no shootings, but by the grace of God, because God knows they were trying out there. We had 10 incidents where shots were fired by people trying to shoot each other. All those shots fired, and that's just in the 28-day period. Okay, 10 shots fired incidents in the 28-day period. They were all clustered in and around Johnson houses and Jefferson houses. There is an intense conflict going on there right now. Back and forth, and just, it's an awful situation. We have posts all over there, foot posts, high visibility posts. We have a temporary headquarters vehicle, which we call a THV, which is basically a big RV. You've seen them around the city. They're on 3rd Avenue now, between 112 and 115, to be manned by 4 officers as a sort of central command for trying to manage and diffuse this very, very dangerous situation where we've had 10 incidents of shots fired in the last 28 days. That's the Wooski group from Johnson. That's the name of the gang from Johnson houses against the ABM, All About Money gang from Jefferson. And we know historically they can be very, very violent, if not with each other, with other housing developments. Officer Powers might talk. There was a homicide in the 2-5 just north of us. That was sort of a spillover maybe from this conflict. The intelligence on that is still developing. A lot of people do believe it was a Johnson Jefferson thing. And unfortunately, the people who believe that live in Johnson and Jefferson. And so it's continuing to fuel this, but there may actually be the Wagner Jefferson conflict returning, but Officer Powers might even have more information than I do on that. And that homicide may be the result of that. On 117 and First. All right, burglaries. We are up significantly. The burglaries have returned, just like 2020. 13 versus 4. 4 of them were commercial burglaries, grocery stores, that kind of thing, being burglarized by people breaking in by crude means, usually just smashing through with a hammer or bricks. 2 were from nitrous storage, and only 1 was a residential burglary. Grand larcenies. Up double from last year, 32 versus 16. This is our most significant jump in crime this year, this period, and it is all due to thefts from motor vehicles. That's a crime that rears its ugly head quite often. We see it, it's kind of cyclical, it goes in waves. And there is somebody working that angle right now, or a couple of people. We have 2 patterns. One around the Lexington houses, which is around 99th and Lex, in and around those blocks, and the other around 109 to 111 between Park Avenue and 2nd Avenue. We have 12 grand larcenies from motor vehicles. So there are other thefts from motor vehicles where the amount is not more than $1,000. But we're talking about 12 thefts from motor vehicles where property or cash taken was over $1,000. Okay, so that's 2 things. Either somebody knows exactly what they're doing, or they're getting extremely lucky. But in any event, people are leaving stuff in their car worth $1,000 or more. Okay, we had cash on more than, I think it was 3 occasions, we had $1,800 or more taken from cars in cash. I have no idea why people are leaving that. We had $7,000 taken this week from the center console in somebody's car that they just left parked on the street. Anyway, seven grand. All right. Frustrating, but also awful for the people involved. I understand that. But 7, that's accounting for our huge bump in grand larcenies. Unauthorized charges continue to be a bane of our existence as a city. Please pay attention to your accounts. We had 7 of those accounting for grand larcenies. Unauthorized charges on your account. Please get alerts for transactions made on your account so you can quickly take action in the bank and replenish your funds. Scams, we shut down, or we seem to have avoided any of the Con Edison scams, which we had 8 last time we spoke over the year, but we didn't have any in this 28-day period. We had 3 scams though. Be aware of handing over money for something that you want, but that you have not seen, smelled, touched. All right, fake jobs, fake apartments, fake animals, big time subjects of scams. Lastly, grand larcenies of auto. I mentioned that we had 6 versus 0 last year, and that we are up some ungodly number. It was well, for the year we're up several 100%. Let's put it that way. And grand larceny autos, we had a wild pattern of people stealing Ford Econoline vans, those big vans that people regularly use in their job, plumbing, carpentry, general contracting. It's a big thing. So people have these vans, they're parking them, but they were being stolen, driven up to the Bronx. And for the most part, out of eight of our vans that were stolen, the catalytic converters were taken from these vans. I didn't know the catalytic converters were in those vans, but they are. So our neighborhood coordination officers went deep in detective work, looking at cameras, starting with a partial plate of 2 digits, checking the video from cameras over every single one of our bridges, and found that every time a van was leaving, there was a car leaving with it, with the partial plate of those two digits. They found the rest of the plates from those cameras going over the 3rd Avenue Bridge, going over the Madison Avenue Bridge, whatever it might be, to the Bronx, every time in accompanying a Ford Econoline van. And they were able to track down, long story short, sorry, they did incredible detective work and tracked down the 2-man team that was stealing these vans, taking them to the Bronx, chopping them up, and then driving across the G-Dub with catalytic converters in the back of another vehicle involved, the pickup. Extremely well done and documented, and great case put together by our neighborhood coordination officers, in particular, Sergeant Hartnett, Officer Henry, and Officer Jones, Sector David. So if you guys are familiar with them, you can give them a slap on the back. Last thing real quick, our traffic collision report for the 28-day period, about even with last year, nothing in particular stands out. 53 accidents in the 28-day period versus 52 last year. Injuries were down slightly, 12 versus 15. No fatalities, thank God. Critical locations haven't changed since our last meeting. 2nd Avenue, 102 to 108. Lexington Avenue, the whole thing, perimeter of Mount Sinai. There were 4 accidents due to traffic and double parking conditions. So I'll take any questions now, unless the committee wishes me to wait until Officer Powers has done her report.
Let's do it together with Officer Powers. Thank you. Officer Powers?
I'm Officer Powers from the 25th Precinct Community Affairs. So I'm just gonna keep mine brief. So far for the 28-day period, we had 2 murders. Robberies, we had 21 robberies. I'm gonna get back to the murders, like once I talk about the shootings. The robberies, we had 21 robberies in the 28-day period, most notably the one on 123rd and 3rd Avenue. We had about 33 felonious assaults, most of the assaults, and 11 burglaries. So most of the assaults and burglaries, they are coming from the Dollar Tree that's on 3rd Avenue and 119th Street. So we have been having some police officers come over there and do a few directives there, and have heavy presence over there because that's like a problematic area. We have 29 grand larcenies so far in the 28-day period, and 12 grand larceny autos in the 28-day period. Most of the grand larcenies that we have, most of them are coming from the delivery people. They would deliver food, but they would leave their keys in the car. So unfortunately, like people watching them, they go in the cars and they drive off. So I'm piggybacking on what Officer Gibbons was saying. The reason why murders is up because we've been having a lot of shootings in the area. Mostly is gang retaliation, like the young kids, they're going back and forth from Jefferson to Wagner. Of the 4 shootings we had, 2 of them resulted in the murders, which is the 2 that's noted on here. So on February 25th, of course, if you guys haven't heard, we had the 25-year-old victim when he was attempting to walk out of the store. The perpetrator saw him and then he chased after him in the store and then he was shot and killed in there. On February 27th, in front of 117 East 115th Street, a 30-year-old man was walking down the street when someone went up to him, pulls out a firearm and fires several shots at him. Fortunately, he survived and he made a full recovery. They're still investigating the case, so they haven't made an arrest so far. On February 27th, we had two males sitting in the parked car on Fifth Avenue. And 2289 Fifth Avenue. It was two males sitting in the car. One person went up to them, shot both of them. One of them was able to run away from the scene and ran to Harlem Hospital where he was treated. The other man, who's a 38-year-old victim, he died. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. If not, because that was heavy media coverage. So he didn't survive, he died. On March 1st, 9:55 hours in front of 2253 3rd Avenue, one person went up to a gang of people and started firing a group of people. One person was shot in the leg, but he survived. Nobody else was, hurt in that incident. So again, that was also a gang, retaliation between, Wagner and Jefferson and all the gangs that's, the young people that's in the area. So unfortunately, shootings are down and, where Peter Gibbons is at, but where I'm at, the shootings are up. So we have been having a lot of crime reduction posts. We have been having the all out posts. So they've been coming around, they've been on foot, they've been driving around. They try to make sure there's heavy police presence in the area to try to keep the crimes down. So we have been combating that. As far as the traffic and collisions, we had 76 collisions. We had 23 injuries. And so far we've been, our heavy, I would say our heavy areas is 117 Pleasant. A lot of people complain about the double parkers over there. So we have been having our traffic officers go over in that location and try to issue a lot of summonses over to the double park cars and have foot patrols over there to direct the cars into other locations. Mostly it's a couple of restaurants over there. So a lot of delivery people, they would leave their cars there and they would, pick up food. But unfortunately, it's created a lot of craziness in the area. So that's why we've been having a lot of police presence over there. 116 and First is also another location where we've been having a lot of issues with the double parked cars and stuff. So we've been having a lot of traffic officers over there. And 116 between 3rd and Lex, that corridor, of course, was filled with a whole bunch of double parked cars. So we have been having our traffic officers go over there and issue the summonses over there for the double parked cars. So far, other than that, like I said before, we've been having a lot of foot patrols and a lot of heavy presence, mostly along 3rd Avenue, 125 in Lexington, 116 in Lexington, and all over because, Mr. Gibbons said that crime has been going on. We've been having a lot of shootings in the area. So we've been having a lot of foot patrols to cover around.
Thank you for the information, Officer Powers. We also attended the 115th Street and 3rd Avenue. What was it, a rally? I saw Officer Powers there. Pete was there as well. Inspector O'Donnell came down, and his information was great. Still hard to hear. Sorry. I'll talk a little louder. Help. We had a street meet on 115th and 3rd Avenue. Inspector O'Donnell was there, Officer Gibbons was there, Officer Powers, Kyoka was there, myself. We attended. It was great information. We're hoping to get Inspector O'Donnell here for the next meeting so he can help us with this troubling time. Pete, you want to mention anything about that street meet?
Yeah, I want to thank everyone. It was really, really well attended by community reps, Community Board 11. I mean, the community councils were there. And I know for all the officers there, it was a great show of support for us. And I hope you guys, it sounds like you guys got something out of it too. Commissioner O'Connor is a real amazing source regarding youth violence, current and past, and a great strategist for the department too. So I'm glad you guys were able to meet him and also to tap into him. So he should definitely come to one of these meetings. He's awesome. I'm sure he'd love to speak to the committee about youth violence in the area. He could go to any community board in the city and talk about, exactly what's going on. He's that knowledgeable. So definitely invite him into the meeting.
His information was definitely impressive. Really
Yeah.
impressive. Do we have any questions? Comments? All right. Guys got it easy tonight.
Oh,
Kyoka, go ahead.
So this is like a general question because I just want to understand. I think I've asked this before. The information that you guys receive in this meeting, so the rundown of this information that Gibbons gives and that Officer Powers just gave, what is the purpose and what do you guys use it for? Because this is the same information that we give at community council meetings. And so like, are we doubling down? Is this purpose for you guys to make legislative recommendations? I'm just trying to understand.
Well, you have to remember, Kyoka, not everyone attends the community council meetings, right? So even though it kind of may be repetitive information, it is information that the community needs. Besides the actual committee members, we also have the public here. We just want to make sure that this information is there so that we can further, when we do district needs, when we're doing any of these other things that are advisory for the city, it's important to have this information at hand. But a lot of it is also, like, I'm sure you hear it at the community council, but again, not everyone attends the community council for the 2.5 and 2.3. I've been able to make the 2.5 the last few times. I'm going to try to make the 2.3 in the next coming months, but that's kind of the reason why. Leslie, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Can you see me or you can't see me?
I can't see you, but I can hear you loud and clear.
I don't know why I can't show, but
You have to turn on your lights.
I don't know how to do that right now. However, hi Gibbs. Hi Gibbons.
Hey. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate the report. Like you said, not everybody attends, and these are good statistics that I can bring down to Franklin Plaza. I'm now that it's gotten warmer, and of course you're gonna hear all the quads and motorcycles and dirt bikes up and down 2nd and 1st Avenue. I've been having right here on 108th Street between 2nd and 1st. I've been having a lot of issues with cars racing down. What can I do which way should I go? I try to go to DOT, I try to go to MTA, I try to go to all these agencies to give people tickets, maybe put a speed bump in the middle of the street. Which direction do I need to take? Because they're racing down 108 Street.
We can definitely, in terms of enforcement, obviously, enforcement is NYPD, but we can, if it is a constant issue there, we can definitely ask for a speed bump to be installed.
Yeah, I will. I will say that Leslie's right. We have gotten consistent complaints for the last several years about just that, whether it be cars or motorcycles or ATVs that race down that particular block. So we certainly would second that and support a speed bump on 108th Street. And also, Leslie, of course, I don't know if you've spoken to your neighborhood coordination officers, Miguel Rivera and Colleen Willis, in regards to the timing, like exactly when that's taking. Maybe they can get officers over there to try to catch these guys in the act, because it is hard. I mean, we do get the calls and stuff, and then by the time we respond, folks they've peeled off, and but if you talk to them about coordinating what time this usually happens, like if it's just at night or in afternoon or all the time, whatever, we'll try to catch them in the act.
Well, I have spoken with Eamon Connors, the Franklin Board Chair, and he speaks with the NCOs on a continuous basis. I have video footage of all these little dirt bikes, quads, motorcycles congregating on the corner of 108 and 1st. And then they'll race up 1st Avenue since the police will not chase them. And then they'll race back and race back around. And it's like, what is this? And they always there with the people that live in 1199. Since they have security over there and it's gated, they choose to come on the Franklin Plaza side, which isn't gated. And I have a huge problem with that because the elderly community is really upset that this is going on. They even ride on the sidewalks. So it's like a really big concern. And now that it's getting warmer, they're going to be out again.
Is your, and we can talk more about this outside of the meeting, but is your footage good enough to identify people? Because we can arrest them based on that footage.
I've sent it before. I sent it last year, so I don't know how far it's gone. I'll look it up and send it again. And also, like the officer said, because they changed the signage on 108th Street and it's angle parking, they started again to block off the entrances to the private parking lots. I don't know why. They're all paper plates. They're not any legal plates. These are all paper plate cars that are here, and they get ticketed, but they don't get towed, and they just stay there for days on end.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Thanks for letting me know. I didn't know they were doing that again.
Oh yeah, they're up and down. I've even called Manhattan North, the traffic office. They're like, yeah, we'll get to it. Nothing. So I'm back to calling 311 again.
Okay.
Thank you, Leslie. I mean, dirt bikes and quads are always going to be an issue when the weather gets warm.
Now I know we have
best,
some,
but you have to understand that it is a public safety issue and they're being chased, and then they jump on the sidewalk, and then if someone's walking on the sidewalk, there's a reason why they try not to chase them. But I did notice last summer what NYPD was go on Instagram, and I saw a lot of people get arrested after they identified themselves on Instagram. And I thought that was pretty clever. So
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. I know our command, like during the summer, we was having like a lot of the motorcycle and dirt bike initiatives where we was getting the illegal bikes off the streets. So if they were illegally parked anywhere, or if they were illegally chained, they didn't have no license plates, no registration, anything, like we would confiscate them. And we would normally have them like every weekend. So I'm sure like once the weather gets warmer, they are going to bring those details back. I know they did stop like in the winter time, even though they were still going around enforcing them. But as far as like the full details, they are going to bring that, they are going to bring them back soon. Because most of the complaints are coming from, motorists who are, like don't have a license, or like don't have a license plate on there, or it's not properly registered. So they will be coming back down with those details soon. So I just wanted to add that on.
thank you, Officer Powers. I've even seen on the weekends, particularly, I'm not sure it was 2-5 or a task force, but they're at the First Avenue Bridge at the entrance, and they'll stop anyone they see on the motorcycle. Because I myself ride, so when they come in, I mean, I show them my license, my registration, everything's fine. They let you go, but I've seen them take a lot of dirt bikes and quads. But again, it's a work in progress. Thank you so much. Kilka, you had one more question?
Yeah, so in my capacity as an actual community member, resident, I do have a question. So in our last meeting at the 2-5, we discussed some of the things that was kind of like impacting the quality of life, but also turning into like aggressiveness by members that are standing outside. Right on 116th Street, there's a kiosk that has like a telephone plug-in, and I don't think I've seen anything else like kind of
Third
like,
Avenue? We talking about Third Avenue?
116 on Park Avenue.
Park Avenue.
It's on the northwest corner of Park and 116. And so the community members were wanted to know this. They said this was the right meeting to come to talk about it, to see if we can get that removed, because it's not being used properly. It's being used by, it's turned into a camp, and no shade to the homeless, because I understand that there are we're working on the homeless situation, but it's also a home to drug dealers and drug addicts. And so we were wondering how we would go about petitioning to get that removed.
By kiosk, you mean one of the new fiber that they're electric and they have a screen and they can charge their phone and.
Yes.
Yeah, not sure. So that project which was installed, we're actually trying to expand it in the city. We're actually looking to expand it here in East Harlem. I did hear about that issue that was happening there, but I mean, that may be more of an enforcement issue than anything else. That program, I mean, I see a lot of people use it. We have it here on 116 and 3rd. You always see someone talking on it or screaming or video chatting or whatever it is they're doing there. Or they're charging their phone sometimes. I mean,
This one
we
is
can-
different though. They live at this one. This is not,
no, I understand, but it may be, I'm gonna take a look. I haven't seen it yet. Usually when I go to the board office, I'll take 117. Just like a habit. I don't, you know, so next time I'll go through 116 to take a look. And then
Yes.
we'll get back to see what we can do.
okay,
Thank you, Kyoka. Okay, let's move forward. 5, do we have anyone here from MTA Police Department? It's been a while. We have to reach out to them. District Attorney's Office, I believe they have a presentation, so we may have put them together with the presentation. I'm not sure if we have a liaison yet for the District Attorney's Office. We do. I see Estelle nodding her head, so. Not sure.
We actually have hi, everybody. We actually have our Chief of Staff, Jordan Stockdale, is with us and is gonna talk for a bit. And also our Chief Assistant District Attorney, Meg Reese, is here with us. And for those of you who haven't met him yet, I want to introduce you to Marco Perez, who is one of our newest community engagement coordinators under Kevin's team. You all remember Jeremy. So it's not official yet, but Marco will most likely be covering East Harlem. So you'll be seeing more of him. Right now he's being trained. He's been with us for about 2 weeks now. Is that right, Marco?
Yes, yes. A pleasure to meet you all. Looking forward to working with you on these concerns.
And you'll hear more from Marco in the future, but today was really for Jordan to come and talk to you a little bit about some of the things that are going on in our office. So I turn it over to Jordan Stockdale, our Chief of
Just
Staff.
give me 1 second, Estelle. Let me
Sure.
finish my informational updates.
Absolutely.
And we'll get
Let us
to
know.
to yourself and to Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you.
And from DOT, we have Jackie with us. Lau is on an extended vacation, it seems. Where'd Jackie go? There she is. Hi, Jackie. Do you hear me? She's unmuted. Am I speaking low again? No.
No, you sound good. We can hear you.
Thank you. Jackie, do you hear me? Right, we may have to get back to Jackie. We do have a couple questions for Jackie, so okay. So then Angel, let's move on. We'll get back to Jackie. Leslie, do you have a question? Or are you still raising your hand from the previous? Thank you. All right.
Oh, can you guys hear me now?
Jackie, there you are.
Oh, sorry about that. I was trying to figure out what was going on.
No, it's fine. Great to have you here. Wanted to know if you had any informational updates for us regards to 117th Street, which is still an ongoing issue.
Yeah, so for 117th, I know we're still working and trying to talk through with the mall. So as of now, there are no updates for that.
Okay.
But we are looking to, come back to the board with some updates relatively soon as, we have those discussions with the mall.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna reach out to the mall myself and to Council Member Diana Ayala to see where we're at. It is a public safety issue, and we are looking forward to participate in that conversation. And I believe we had something else for Jackie. Leslie, you have a question? Is this?
Yeah, that was, I was gonna ask, is this the platform or is this the person I need to speak to about the Second Avenue Task Force?
From DOT Task Force, Second Avenue Task Force?
Like, yeah.
For the subway?
Right, is there any chatter
No.
or anything going on about the proceeds, it coming into fruition, is gonna start? Are they negotiating? Because nobody has come to Franklin Plaza to speak to them. I know they've been doing a lot of surveying and a lot of ground digging on Second Avenue here, a lot of drilling at 7 o'clock at night on a Saturday. or 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday.
Yeah, we have not had them yet come to our committee. We're gonna request them to come. But no, Jackie is not the person you would talk to in regards to the Second Avenue subway. That task force, when we have them come in, I will alert you because I know that yourself and Franklin Plaza have a lot of interest in the subject.
Okay, now do I speak to her about the city bikes?
I believe you were given an answer to the city bikes.
Oh, I just want to make sure that, my voice is out there, and we are very concerned, extremely concerned on why they put it without letting the board know on our property.
Oh, they put it on the sidewalk. Technically, that's not your property.
Right.
But according to what Jackie and Lyle told me last, that particular location in Franklin Plaza at the sidewalk was placed while they were doing construction at the original site. And as soon as the original site is finished with construction, then they'll be returning it to that site. But yes, Jackie, you could ask Jackie a question in regards to that. Jackie, I'm not sure if Jackie
Yep,
has
I'm
that
more than-
information available, but.
Yep, Leslie, and I'm happy to take back any concerns to the team. But yeah, if there's a particular question, I'd be more than happy to try and answer.
Yes, well, I have been, I was spearheading the last petition to remove or not have city bikes on our property. Now this one, it only because of the location, it's in between two buildings, and I have a lot of people that have wheelchairs, walkers, and blind people, and they count the steps from their building to the next building. Where the bikes are at, it impedes their walking because they rely on the fencing along the grounds, and the bikes are right in front of it. So I've already had 2 people trip over them that are blind. I was suggesting that it can be put in front of Chase Bank on 106th Street, where there's a lot of space, a lot of walk room, and it won't impede on the bikes, the buses, the handicapped people, the wheelchairs, the blind people, the garbage, and foot traffic. It will not impede that. Right now, it does impede the foot traffic between First and Second Avenue
I see.
on 106th.
Okay, and so for the location that you're suggesting in front of the Chase Bank on 106, was that included in your, I believe you had sent some correspondence? Is that included in your letter?
Well, this just happened overnight. Apparently they told
Okay.
management Thursday, and then Monday they were there. So now I'm kind of like behind the 8 ball. In this particular platform, the previous platform, I was told ahead of time, and I was able to have them put the city bikes in front of White Park on 106 between 3rd and Lexington. But because if this is temporary, I'm just concerned about the elderly people that walk through there on a constant basis, and especially the ones that are blind or have visually impairment, because the bikes take up a lot of space, and it's just limited space as they walk by. And then the people, and I have
Leslie.
children with spinal bifida that are in wheelchairs. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Leslie. Jackie, do you have any questions regard to exact locations? I can forward it to you. I think Lau already looked into this. Where they're currently at, it's a temporary hold. We could see if maybe this Chase location is separately, but we'll definitely look into it either way. But you may not be familiar with that area, but I'm going to reach out and send you exactly where that area is. We are planning actually a walkthrough of, we did 96th Street already. We're planning the walkthrough for 106th Street. So this can be done at that walkthrough. We'll be able to see it in person. And Jackie was there at the last walkthrough. Did you?
Can I be
So,
invited?
Yep.
Yep. All right, Leslie. So I'll invite you to that walkthrough as well so that you can participate. We invited the whole committee, but now I'd like to move forward. Thank you. both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie, for being here as well. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, now let's go forward for our presentation. We are very
I'm sorry,
happy
Jose.
to have.
Can I just have one more quick update?
Oh, please go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
there
sorry.
is
Go ahead.
there is a residential construction project that is happening on 2033 Fifth Avenue. So due to this, and this location actually borders CB10 and CB11. So due to the upcoming construction project, they're removing parking on the west side of Fifth Avenue between 125th Street and 126th Street. And, this is done to, temporarily to maintain 2 travel lanes. We had, our team go out there and, we felt that we needed to maintain 2 southbound travel lanes on Fifth Avenue, which is why this was considered the best option. And, it's only going to happen on the west side of Fifth Avenue, again, between 125th and 126th Street. This is slated to happen within the next few weeks, but it could be as early as April 1st.
So that's across the street from the National Black Theater?
I am not too sure.
We said Fifth Avenue, 125th, 126, right?
Yes, on the west side.
Okay, yes, then it is across the street from the National Black Theater. Okay, thank you for that update. Did DOT alert the neighborhood, the corresponding area?
I'm not too sure. I will have to double check. I know that our permits office looked into it, but I'm gonna check with our Office of Construction Mitigation Coordination and see if there was any outreach that was done to the neighboring locations.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think Dawn, yeah, that would be great because we'd like to make sure the National Black Theater and everyone in that area knows about this construction. All right, Jackie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
We're going to move forward for our presentation discussion. We're very happy to have with us tonight the District Attorney's Office. And I will have Meg Reese, Chief Assistant District Attorney, Jordan Stocko, Chief of Staff, Estelle, which we already spoke to, Director of Community Partnership Units, Marco Perez, our hopefully training community liaison. So Estelle, please, or Jordan.
I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jordan so he has some time to talk. And yeah, so thank you. Jordan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. We can do some quick introductions first, but Jordan Stockdale, I'm Chief of Staff at the District Attorney's Office. I used to teach about a decade ago in East Harlem at PSMS 57 under Principal Soto. So it's nice to kind of be back home, if you will, and talk to everyone here. I want to give Meg a chance to introduce herself as well.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to join your meeting. I'm Meg Reese, and I'm the Chief Assistant in the District Attorney's Office. And my background is both is starting in Brooklyn and in and out of government, always working on in criminal justice. And look forward to hearing your questions and of course more of your concerns.
Thank you. So again, we look forward to working with you all. I just want to talk a little bit about the District Attorney's priorities in our first 2 months in office. And then we want to hear some questions from you all and talk about how we can partner towards meeting your concerns and needs. So the number one issue is gun violence. That's something that we're seeing throughout Manhattan, but especially in East Harlem and in Harlem. We appointed Peter Pope, which is our first executive DA for gun violence prevention ever, who's overseeing and coordinating that work across the various departments here. We have prosecuted over 100 felony gun cases this year. It's slightly more than last year at this time. So we're dedicating significant office resources to getting guns off the street. Obviously, we're working with our federal and state partners to trace all guns from possession cases and to leverage and build gun trafficking cases that'll ultimately stem the tide of guns pouring into our city. And that's something the DA talks about often. We need to stop guns from entering our neighborhoods. And to do that, we have to build big cases against the folks that are trafficking the guns, and we are working to do that. We're also targeting ghost guns. We had a pretty high profile ghost gun case a couple of weeks ago where we secured a prison sentence for someone who was selling ghost guns and who actually had some anti-police rhetoric in their apartment when we actually did the investigation. And you know, it was a danger to the public. We're also working closely with the Gun Violence Strategic Partnership to coordinate resources and to find the people who are the drivers of guns It's a relatively small number of people that drive gun violence throughout the city. We're working with all of our law enforcement partners to identify those individuals and ensure that they're held accountable for their actions. We did a gun buyback in Washington Heights last week where we recovered over 49 guns. We're going to do another one in Harlem coming up. We plan to do them all throughout the city and would love to partner with you on our gun buybacks. And while this is our first 2 months in office, we do have some anti-gun violence plans coming up to ensure that we have some proactive strategies to reduce the number of people who actually pick up a gun and engage in violence in the first place. Our office is also funding a number of community-based organizations within East Harlem, Exodus, and a number of others that we could talk about. The East Harlem Hub and a number of Saturday Night Lights programs as well. And so that's our number one priority is gun violence. We're also expanding our hate crimes unit. It's quite a small unit under the last administration, and something that we're expanding and something that Alvin cares about deeply. I guess the last point here is shoplifting and robberies. That's something that we know has increased this year. It's something that is a problem, particularly in Manhattan. And we've spoken with a number of business groups throughout Manhattan on this issue. We are also working with Uptown Grand Central, with the 25th Precinct and Commanding Officer Chris Henning, who is on our Small Business Alliance, where we are working to develop solutions to reduce shoplifting. We have a strategy that we're implementing right now. We're working in tandem with NYPD on this. We're receiving data from the NYPD of people that are driving the shoplifting numbers throughout Manhattan. Those are individuals that have the highest number of shoplifting arrests over the last year, either at the same location or throughout Manhattan. And we've tagged arrest alerts to those individuals. And we're looking at whether those individuals currently have open cases and how we can leverage those cases to ensure that they're held accountable and connected to services when that's appropriate. So we're going to roll this strategy out publicly soon, but it's a multi-tiered strategy that we believe will reduce shoplifting in Manhattan. And we look forward to continuing to work with NYPD on that. So I'm gonna leave it there, unless Meg, is there anything you want to add? Is there anything more you want to talk about?
No, thank you, Jordan. I'd love to hear if people have questions.
And I'm sure we will have many questions. Michelle?
Hi, thank you.
Kyoka?
I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to see if I can get my screen to work. I don't know if you can see me. I don't know if the screen came on.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, okay, good. I would like to ask a question pertaining to the people that are repeat offenders when it comes to assault, just randomly coming up to a person, either hitting them in the face, kicking them in the chest, or whatever type of way they want to create chaos and violence on people just crossing the street. And then those same individuals, when the person is on the ground, they get arrested. And then a few hours later, they're back on the street. And the person that has been assaulted is so fearful of just leaving their house. I know crime has changed and it's not like it was in the 1990s, but it is something that, especially during a pandemic, when people are at the brink of just such absolute extremes, to have this be part of it and to see it not being controlled is just too much. Has this been addressed? It's like giving a person, a teenager, wine, or being able to drink alcohol. Is this action of being picked up, arrested, and released? Have you seen it working, or has it not been what you expected?
Jordan, do you mind if I jump in here? So thank you for the question, Michelle, because there's a big misunderstanding about what is an arrest arrestable and detainable offense for someone. So what you've described to me is an assault. And under, I think a lot of people attribute what's going on to bail reform, but under the bail reform laws, an assault is not a DATable offense, meaning that somebody doesn't necessarily have to get a desk appearance ticket. Any offense in which an order of protection could be given, which is an assault, or a menacing, or anything where an order of protection would be given, that could be a custodial arrest. So I'm not sure why again, just going from the facts you're telling, I'm not sure the circumstances in which the person was released immediately. But normally in these situations, that would be an assault that would come through the system in the normal way where somebody's arrested, they then have to be processed and get to a judge within 24 hours. We screen those cases, we write them up as misdemeanors. We do not divert assault cases. We have something that we call pre-arraignment diversion. Assault cases do not fall into that category because we want to speak to the victim in that case. We want to have a good understanding of what the injuries are, and we want to see almost all of our work is victim centered. So we want to hear what the victim wants. And so that case would not be diverted. That person would go in front of a judge. And then from there, it's depending on their criminal history, if they have an open case or they don't have an open case. There are other things, if they've shown up to court before, they haven't shown up to court, whether or not bail would be set. There are different types of bail. So there's no bail, which we call released on your own recognizance. There's supervised release, where there are conditions upon your release. There's electronic monitoring, and then bail is set. So depending on the circumstances of this case, the injury, the person's history, if they're known to come back to court or not, bail can only be set whether or not somebody is likely not to return to court. So if there is no criminal history with a person, then judge is not going to set bail on that because there's no reason to think that they're not coming back to court. If there is a history or there's a bench warrant history, which means they haven't come back to court, then sometimes they do set bail or supervised release. So that's what happens in that case, that in our office. And then we work with the victim, and we see usually in these circumstances where we see these like random attacks, obviously if it's not serious, if it's less serious injury, we've seen that those people suffer from mental illness, but we assess each case individually to see what the needs are, again, in the context of the criminal history and of course being victim centered.
If the individual does need some sort of mental care and they are released on their own and just left, I think that has a way of being a detriment to society, because if that person needs that care and they came to the judge and they are repeat offenders and they're just put out onto the street, that is doing an injustice to that individual as well.
1,000%. And one of the big initiatives that the DA is pushing is how do we get those resources, both mental health resources and housing resources. Those are the two biggest needs that we see. How do we get them into arraignments, which is where that person would, after getting arrested, they would show up in front of a judge in arraignments. And if they are being released, there's no mandate for them for those services, but their defense attorney can connect those to those services right in the courtroom when the person is most vulnerable, when they're most in need of being released out, maybe potentially not having a place to stay, not having food, needing mental health, maybe physical health care. And so one of the things that we're trying to collaborate with the city on is how can we get those resources into the courtroom so it's readily accessible. Another thing that we're working on that actually there should be, I think all 6 sites are in northern Manhattan, and Jordan, you might know better exactly where they be, but we have a health justice network, and they're health justice workers who actually connect with people. And these are for people who have been already impacted by the system. So if this is somebody who's their first arrest, then it wouldn't necessarily come into play. But if somebody has had connection, actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back, because we do have one at 100 Center Street, which is arraignments, where you have an individual person that works with you to connect you to resources. And it can be attending to basic needs, but most importantly, trying to get to your both mental and physical health needs. And we have that as well. The biggest challenge we have is making those connections, which is why we so desperately want to have that in the courtroom at the time of arraignment. And so the DA has been everywhere he can, and every ask he can make is just trying to make that connection and get those resources there. And I think the city is receptive, and I feel hopeful that we will get it there. But you're 1000% right. We can't just release people without connection, without like any infrastructure.
The connections happen.
Excuse me?
Look forward to seeing those.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And it's just you asking these questions and community coming forward, asking that specific question gives us more ammunition to say this is needed. The community is asking for this. This is something that we hear over and over again. People are recognizing this need. And so please, let's connect the dots. And I think that's why they're so receptive, because they hear you.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Michelle. We have another question, Kyoko.
So thank you so much. I have actually 2 questions. So the first one is because I didn't hear what I think Marco was speaking, and you said you were working with certain organizations around gun violence, and I didn't hear you mention, maybe you did, Go So Save.
Yeah, so I mean, GOSO is a very important cure violence credible messenger organization in Harlem. I'm actually in Harlem. I'm not sure if we have a program with GOSO. Estelle, do you know that? Do you know?
We work closely with GOSO, and we've made referrals to GOSO. We're not funding them directly, but they were part of the hub that we were funding in East Harlem. So, but Kyoko, we work closely with Omar, and all the things that we were doing before. If anything, under the new DA's leadership, we're going to do more of it. So we're looking forward to Kyoko working with you and others in East Harlem that work to try to prevent gun violence. So yeah, definitely continue to work with GOSO and you and others.
Yes, thank you. So that goes to my second point, but kind of combined to another point. So one of the things that we're actually about to start doing is, we used to do this in the past. I'm not saying it was super successful, but it did build relationships so that we could work towards combating gun violence. We're going to have our collaborative meeting so that we can figure out like what it is that, what areas are the hot spots. I mean, Gibbons kind of gave an overview today of what it was. Where it is and where we need to kind of head to. But we're having a meeting soon along with Commissioner O'Connor to talk not with the young people, because young people don't want to talk to us, but with the parents about what's exactly going on in East Harlem, because a lot of people just don't know. I said this the other day, a lot of them are oblivious to the actual going on. So they think they hear it, someone got shot, and it's like, to them, it's a silo. And in East Harlem, unfortunately, a lot of these situations are connected. But it leads me to, I actually had the opportunity to have a call with the DA and with Estelle and crew. And one of the things that I feel like should happen, and I know that you guys have probably been doing this, but I haven't seen it in East Harlem, is giving some educational pointers on just what Meg was talking about, because people are confused about the difference between what is arrestable and what gets a DAT. And part of that is probably the media. We all know how that works. But I think it makes sense, because as a community council president, when I sit and I listen to, listen to things that happen, right? I don't even want to go, and I don't even want to give examples. And I hear a young person or someone being released, it's concerning to me. And so I think that if people were more educated on the process and what was going on, then you won't get that hit back so quickly, because we just don't know. I mean, even including myself, I've done some research. Some of it is concerning to me, of a young person, 14 years old, had a gun, got arrested 2 weeks ago with a gun, and was released again. And this was even before DA Braggs was in office. So I think it's an educational process that needs to happen.
So Kyoko, what we've done with you in the past where I guess it was Andy Warshar came and talked at your community council meeting. We can do that again. And we can do it on any topic, the topic you just described. We also have Sean McMahon, who now runs the Crime Strategies Unit, and Mary Osberg, who works within there. Together with our education team, they created this really, I think, impactful gun violence prevention presentation / conversation platform that can be tweaked and set up for, you know, whatever the audience is looking for. So whether it's your community council, whether it's your collaborative, if you want CSU and our team from CPU to come out and present some of that, you know, information, we're always available to do that. And work with you in any way that you think would work best for East Harlem. So, you know, Marco's getting up and running in his work, and you know that Kevin and myself, we remain available to set that up. And I agree with you, education is key, and we have a whole education team ready to help to make that happen.
Yeah. Kyoka, I would just say also, like, anytime, any place, I'll come sort of just explain the system, and that this has come up before, and the different ways that people who have been arrested move through the system. I'm very, very happy to do that. And doesn't matter if you have 2 people or 15 people, whatever, whenever.
Thank you, Kyoka. Thank you. I'm actually going to take you up on that, Meg, in a little bit. First, we have Cindy Garcia with us, committee member. She has a question. I'm happy to have you back, Cindy.
Thank you so much for having me. I wanted to say thank you to the district attorney's office to actually come on and share some of this, some of the efforts that the new district attorney is putting forth together. Specifically the pathways to public safety division that will use alternatives to incarceration across all district attorney's office. You know, like actually restructuring the way that you know the alternatives to incarceration, specialized court parts specifically around mental health. So I was able to tune into a discussion in regards to this specific program, where they discussed that if someone has any mental health issues or any mental incapacities at that point, that they right there in the court system, they'll be able to actually have access to help. You know, this will allow a lot of our most vulnerable individuals who, you know, don't have access to mental health services, don't have access to housing, to, you know, not go back into the system. So my question was, you know, I can see all the effort that's going towards this program, and I can see the positive impact that this program can have, specifically here in our district. Are you guys ready for the impact of and that this program may have, specifically around better understanding some of the challenges that will be presented in your office?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for attending our presentation on that and for understanding the impact of ensuring individuals have services earlier in the case life cycle. We know that individuals receiving the right services earlier in the case cycle can reduce recidivism and ultimately make us all safer. And we know it's just the right thing to do. If someone's, you know, committing crimes based on addiction or mental health issues, providing them services earlier is really important for everyone. And so our announcement of that new division is really geared towards that. And so again, thank you. I took your question to be, are you ready to launch the program? Or I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but I will say that we're really committed.
For the volume.
Yes, the volume, the sheer number of individuals who in the past, they would go into the system, they would be incarcerated for a certain number of time and then come back and it would kind of happen. So I was wondering if your office was ready for the volume of work that will be coming your way.
Yeah.
So is- Oh, go ahead, Jordan. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would say, I mean, that's why we rolled out this division and we're scaling this work in the office by hiring individuals so that we are ready for that capacity. I mean, it's going to take some time to really scale up the division, but we're committed to it. We're committed to hiring and we're committed to embedding that work within the entire office through policies and procedures. So I don't know, Meg, if you have anything else to add there.
Yeah, and I was going to say, just as far as the volume on the resources needed, we're really hoping to leverage what resources the city has, to use those also to be able to support more people. And I know that this is a budget priority for the district attorney as well. And so in this budget cycle, this will be a priority for one of our asks to be able to expand specifically mental health services and resources. And I should add just one more thing, sorry, as far as on the front, that our mental health court is with felonies, but we have just opened up a misdemeanor mental health court at Midtown Community Court. And that will be dealing with people who suffer from mental illness but are charged with the misdemeanor, starting out with misdemeanors and maybe some felonies. But right now it's just with misdemeanors.
That's excellent. I hope that the district attorneys are able to take advantage of the budgeting available for the Manhattan Justice. What's it called again? Yes, Manhattan Justice opportunities, and hopefully that will, take off some of the pressures, the budget pressures that you might encounter. So thank you again for everything.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Sandy. Meg, I wanted to ask you a question and then actually go ahead, Diane, and then I'll come back to Mike.
Are you going to ask a question, Jose? You can.
No, please, go ahead.
So I have a question for the DA team as to two programs that used to be in effect. One of them is the loitering program. There was signage associated with it, and it would go into certain buildings that say you can't loiter, you can't basically stay here, which helps with some of the issues, particularly in certain housing, that people are just hanging out in the hallways, hanging out in the laundry rooms. That creates many of the activities that are impacting the community as a whole. That's the first thing. So the second thing is another program that used to be, and that's quite pertinent to particularly the 125th Street area. And, full disclosure, I'm the board of the chair for Uptown Grand Central. So you can understand why I'm going to ask the following question. And it has all to do with the M35 bus and everybody else associated in that area. There used to be a program where the DA used to have all of the associated programs meet and discuss issues and concerns, included the community as well as included other people. So both programs are as far as I know, I don't know what the status is of the loitering one, but I definitely know that the M35 providers is no longer there. So that's my question, Jordan, or Meg, or whoever wants to take it up. Are these two programs being thought of again, and possibly where do we stand with them?
I just want to ask a question on the second program, and Estelle, please jump in, and I'm sure you know more about it. But you're referring to like a task force-like group that used to meet with the providers on 125th Street with the DA?
Nope. I'm talking about a program that was established, and now this is probably going to date myself, Morgenthau, that he used to have with the late Marie De La Rosa. And they would meet monthly to talk about the same issues that you're talking about today on 125th Street and 116th Street and even Port Authority are the same issues that were there many years ago when I first started out in public service. They came up with the idea, let's have a monthly meeting to talk about that and try to work some of these issues among ourselves in conjunction with, of course, enforcement. So whether you want to call it just a get together, which it was not, some important information came out of that meeting. And I don't know if there's been many initiatives, but I can tell you clearly, because I sat in those meetings when we learned that 700 people were coming across, 700 people were coming in addition to the people on the bus through private van. So these are things that people learned about over time. So that's a different program. Jordan, you probably was still going to school. But yeah, this was a serious program. And I think most of the board members like Angel and maybe even Jose remembers Maria de la Rosa.
Right. I think
The
Jordan,
lady.
actually one of the things that you wanted to create, so Jordan has something that he wanted to create. And it, at the beginning of your or when we joined your meeting, I remember somebody saying the sharing of information, and it made me actually think of what Jordan's idea is about being able to share information like that and get together in person and fill you in on what's happening. Do you want to explain? I don't want to say the name of it, Jordan, because we don't like the working title.
Yeah. So I think there's a few different pieces here. One, we met with the PC, the police commissioner, and all the high-level brass this last week, Meg as well, and the district attorney to talk about 125th Street. And so it was police, it was Department of DSS, Social Services, which is over the Department of Homeless Services now. It was sanitation. And so we had an interagency meeting talking about how can we improve the conditions on 125th Street. Our office is committed to working with that group to solve problems. We are also working with the 125th Street bid. They sent us a list of individuals that they believe are driving shoplifting in the community, and we are putting arrest alerts on those individuals. So when we come into our office, we can look at their cases, see if they have any other open cases, see what leverage points we have to ensure they stop conducting the activity that they're doing. So that's what we've committed to thus far. Separately, we're interested in creating a method that we can discuss our data and the programs that we have with the community, as well as hear community input and hear community concerns on a regular basis. We haven't decided a cadence yet, but it would be like a Danny stat where we talk to community members on a regular basis about what we're doing in the office and hear from their concerns about what we should be doing, what we need to do more of. So does that answer your question?
And I think that those the DA stopped having those meetings when Maria passed away.
Yeah, they stopped it.
And I believe that Council Member Ayala started. We may have to have a conversation because she was doing continuous meetings. I went to a few of them, but I believe during the pandemic, they may have stopped or slowed down. So we may have to have a conversation to start them up again. Now that things have.
So I think if I may, I worked with Maria Del Rosa and it did stop. And then it's when the mayor's office started it up again and Ayala's office started it up again, our office felt like it wasn't necessary to add another group to a meeting that was already happening. So instead we attended those meetings, all very similar to the one that Maria had started, which was bringing all the different agencies together, and which is what Jordan is talking about as well. So I think we're all moving in the same direction, which is we need to bring everybody together and figure out which agencies can do what to address the issues on 125th Street. And I think that's sort of the plan that Jordan is outlining. It's just a matter of making sure if Ayala's office is going to lead it, or the mayor's office, or PD, or the DA's office. And I feel like I've had conversations with Kyoka and others about this, that sometimes in East Harlem, there's so much motivation that we have all these different groups having meetings about the same topic. And we really just have to figure out who's going to take the lead and make it keep, happening. And I think Jordan's plan is a great one, that if we stick with it, we can get back to sort of what Maria had started back in the day, Diane. And so I think we're headed back to that.
We're headed, but the one good thing that Marie did was she had the providers at those meetings. I can't speak for the task force meeting. I am not at those meetings, but I can specifically say when it came to Marie's, she had the Odyssey House. She had Beth Israel there. She had whoever the homeless shelter people there, she had them in the room. Many times the community often has to work among themselves to address the issues. And I think that's what her plan was. There were very little agencies at the meeting, at least the ones that I participated in. It was frankly community talking to community, trying to address the issues. And that's all I'll say on that. So what about the other program, Jordan or Estelle, or?
Good, just, I really like that point. And that's something we do want to do. And we talked about last week with the police commissioner, is that we do need to pull in Mount Sinai. We do need to pull in the other providers and talk to them about their practices, Oasis, and ask, why are there individuals that are in the street for a long period of time congregating? If they are part of the facility, why are they not in the facility? And so that's a discussion that we want to have, and then we want to help be a part of that convening power so that we can discuss those issues as a community.
And so the only last thing I'll say is the DA program of no loitering in front of the buildings and all these other things, no ball playing, whatever. You know what I'm talking about, the signage that went up in the building, and they were part of that program. So it was understood, you don't hang out in this area.
In some buildings, it was called the Clean Hallways Act. And it would have the community affairs number under it. So I absolutely know what you're talking about, because I need them to reinvigorate it, because I need it to happen.
That's right.
Diane, we've heard a lot. This has come up repeatedly in the many of the meetings that we're in, and I think we have to go get together with PD and the tenants associations and the members of the building and really figure out a strategy about how to approach this, because we've heard some really difficult situations at best, and some that are very scary situations. So I think we need to figure out how we can work again as a group to address it.
All right, so basically it's there, but not there.
So the thing with loitering would be in the opposite to the assault. Like as many of you probably know, like loitering for prostitution, which I know that's not what we're talking about here, but loitering is has a charge on its own, very difficult. So loitering for prostitution was made not a crime anymore. I think that was last year or 2 years ago, pulled by the legislature. So I think in this situation, it would be a DAT-able offense. People would be back, and I don't think it would actually provide a long-term solution. And I think we really have to get to the root of what a long-term solution would be, and just merging the two questions that you had, and really the one of bringing to the forefront the suggestion about having the meeting and how does community solve if we can bring the resources to the table. And I think that really is the role of the district attorney, is how can we use our platform to get you the resources you need to address the issues, because truthfully, it's all about community-led public safety. And so I think that's what we need. This is a perfect example of that's what we need to do on this issue and with all of you, and figuring out how we are going to address it with local groups as well as other, more housing, and Jordan just said Mount Sinai and whatever those are, but we have to figure out a plan for this. You are not the first person to mention this, and it's at your home. So we have to get to this. You have to feel safe and comfortable walking into your home and being in your hallways. And your laundry room. I mean, in your laundry room, you have,
The answer to your question, though, also, Diane, we have to do what Megan and Jordan are describing, but the answer is that the trespass affidavit program is not in existence.
That's right. It's not.
It's not. And there's a lot of reasons why, but so to Meg's point, now we have to kind of rethink what is the best approach to deal with the different issues that are happening in front of buildings or inside buildings that involve people loitering or so that's something that we have to coordinate also with PD and with the community. But the trespass affidavit program, you'll probably see some of the signs, if they haven't already, coming down. there's a whole lot of reasons for it. One thing that happened is that there was so many buildings in the program. I mean, you walk up in Harlem and Washington Heights, and it's rare to see a building that doesn't have that sign on it, that it kind of defeated the purpose of the program, which was to have some buildings be identified. But right now, the trespass affidavit program and the safe, I forgot what you said it was called, Keoka, but in other boroughs, it has different names, but it is not in place right now.
And you're absolutely right, Estelle. It was all over, so it became meaningless to people. That's basically what happened. And
So
I
just like 125th Street, this issue is something that we have to rethink. And, I think Jordan's plan and vision is what we're going to be working on with all of you moving forward. And we have a lot of work to do.
I would say it's the DA's plan, not my plan, and all of us are working on it. I would say, and then Sal, can you just inform folks when the program actually ended?
It ended, I would say, within the last year and a half.
2019.
Thank you, Keoka.
The point is that we didn't, take office 2 months ago and end the program.
No, I understand that. I understand that, Jordan. I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
No, thank you. And we're meeting and we're hearing a lot about this. We're meeting with an organization tomorrow in East Harlem, actually, to talk about a specific issue to their building where they have what they're describing as a homeless encampment in their lobby. And there's a lot of issues that come with that, including, people using the bathroom and the stairwells and that kind of thing. And people feeling unsafe walking to and from their building. So that's something that we know people can't tolerate, and it's really scary. And so we want to work with the community on an actual solution here. It's given that, we're not going to just incarcerate our way out of that. Yeah.
So the last thing I'll say, and I don't want to monopolize, we had an incident 2 weeks ago where there was gunfire, shooting in the block right next to a Head Start school. And literally the children had to hit the deck. So you know what I'm talking about. They were instructed to get on the floor. Imagine what a 3 and 4 year old, how that's affecting them. And then, so I don't have an answer for that. I don't expect you either to have an answer to that, but it's something to really think about, because it's not just impacting adults, it really is affecting children, not just for that day, but totally in their lifetime. So that's my last comment. Thank you both. Thank you all. Hopefully I gave you some thinking points.
No, absolutely. And on that last point, that's absolutely terrible.
It is.
There's data by Patrick Sharkey that shows that violence in communities, and not just gun violence, but assaults, weapon attacks, whatever, it actually decreases young people test scores in that neighborhood. And the theory is that they're more concerned about safety than their kind of long-term future goals. So stress reduces cognitive capacity, and when people are focused on whether they're going to be safe for an individual day, it's harder to focus on long-term success in your career. And so that's a really powerful study, and something that we think about in terms of how we're prosecuting it. We have to realize that there are impacts on young people and on their future, even if they're not involved in the crime. Just being in a neighborhood that's more dangerous actually reduces test scores. So
just being told to hit the deck in a non-war area, it's totally unacceptable. Totally. Okay,
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Diane. I have a question, and then we'll move on to Marissa. Meg, particularly in our community, we have a lot of youth violence. That's probably our biggest public safety issue.
Could you repeat that, Jose? What?
I'm sorry. Let's see if this works better. In our community, our biggest public safety issue is youth violence, particularly between different housing developments. A lot of guns are involved. And I just want a few questions, because I know that we've asked the 2-3 and the 2-5 these questions. And I believe they've told us that anyone underage, even if they get arrested with a gun, we've had incidents where we've had someone get arrested 2-3 times, age 14, 15, 16, and they're out on the street by the next day, and they start to learn the system, and they know now that it's not an issue for them to carry a gun because it doesn't, affect them in a long period of time. How is the DA in this position? Is it a state rule that we have to look at? Is it a city rule?
So there's a few different things. 14 is not our jurisdiction. Those cases automatically go to family court. So 14 and 15 and under related to possession of a weapon, those automatically family court. And then there is, as you probably know, raise the age happened because New York was one of 2 states in the nation where the age of majority was 16 and up. And that changed, the first part of that law changed in 2018. And then the second part changed for, first it was 19-year-olds and then it went to 18-year-olds in 2000 and, it was the misdemeanors first and then the felonies in 2018, 2019. So the law for 16 and up related to gun, I'm going to say 16 and 17 to start, related to straight gun possession under raise the age. If that weapon is in a backpack or in a coat pocket, it is not displayed, it is not used, it is not waved, it is not flashed, it is not anything, those cases go to family court. However, if that weapon is used in some way, then the district attorney has the discretion to, and I'm talking, forget if there's a shooting, I'm talking about just the waving, the displaying, menacing, anything like that. The district attorney has the discretion to hold that in adult court. And then of course, if the weapon is actually used and as part of a crime, if it's a robbery or it's fired, then there's categories in which I think the language in the statute is extraordinary circumstances. If it fits into a category of extraordinary circumstances, the DA can make an application to the court to retain the 16 and 17-year-old in adult court. And then of course, 18 and older is adults, and that's all in adult court. And so under anything that is retained in adult court, there's a mandatory minimum of 3.5 years in state prison. Of course, there's a lot of different circumstances that go into that, but that's what the law is.
Okay, thank you. Because a lot of times what happens, or what we've seen in our community, is that the older, let's say, we use the word gangs because NYPD is officially labeling them as gangs, the different housing. We view them as housing, Johnson or Carver East River. But let's say the older gang members are almost using the younger kids because they know that they have a higher minimum mandatory 3.5 years. So what they do is they're pushing these young kids to be their shooters for them because they know, and they tell them, listen, you're going to be in and out. It won't be on your record. And we end up having children or these kids with multiple gun charges, and at that point it becomes very concerning for us because there's a complete disregard for the community and for our public safety in that regard. That's why I wanted to understand exactly how it works and the logistics behind it, but because a lot of times this is what's happening. The older members are pushing, they know the law, they're pushing the younger kids to carry it. And they're pushing the younger kids to be, and these kids, unfortunately, they want to make a name for themselves. I tell people all the time, anyone that comes into the neighborhood, I said, look, and they always ask me, is it dangerous in East Harlem? I said, look, it's not dangerous, but be respectful, particularly to young kids, be respectful, because these young kids are trying to make a name for themselves. And if they're pushed to it just to make a name for themselves, they will do something violent. And we see that, and that's why typically when we see the shooters, they tend to be underage. We wanted to know what would be the process and what we can do to help, or what can we do to change a certain situation, because for us it's a huge public safety issue. It's our number one public safety issue in this community.
Yeah. One of the things that there was a question in the chat just about what the judges can see. It said the family court judges. The family court judges, this is a question that comes up all the time. If somebody has a family court history and then they come into adult court, we can't see what happened in family court. So we don't know what the history is. I think the family court judge would be able to see what happens in family court.
I'm not,
Just
I don't think they can. I actually
the
don't think.
family court judge can see the history of the child in family court.
Of course, so, all right. Okay, so
No.
I didn't think so. So that's something that I've been told, but yeah.
Oh, the court, the judges, and I don't know family court. I've never practiced there. So Jordan, you're if you know that, then you're right. Nobody listen to me. I can tell you that the judges in adult court, the court that we work in, cannot see the family court history, cannot see the history of the young person that comes before them, if there is a family court history or not. So and neither can the DAs. We have no visibility into that. So we don't know that history.
That's good to know.
And
we need a solution, because unfortunately, this gang violence and this gang operations are using the laws against our public safety, right? They're taking advantage, and they're using kids, and because the laws are the way they are, they're actually using them as a weapon. The gun isn't the weapon, the kid is the weapon.
I know.
So Jose, this isn't obviously there's no quick solution, but one kind of part of the puzzle to the solution is that we are inviting young adults to come in and be a part of a fellowship in our office called a Gun Violence Prevention Fellowship. So if you know of any young people who are interested, it's a paid fellowship during the summer, and it's geared towards people who have been impacted directly by gun violence and are college age, have graduated or got their GED as of 2022 in June. And the application, we're accepting applications right now. So if you know any young people, you too, Kioka, if you know anybody who you think could benefit from this program, and the idea is that they come in and work with us for the summer and give us some proposals or ideas on how we can be more effective in preventing gun violence among youth in Manhattan. So hopefully we'll get some applicants from East Harlem.
Thank you, Estelle.
I'm gonna I'm sorry. I'm gonna leave my email address. Can you email me information on that? And I can spread the word to like the kids that I work with, and also I can spread the word to the youth coordination officers, because when they do their visits for the youth, they usually give out information to refer kids to the programs like that. So I'm gonna leave my email address inside the chat. That way you can email me the information and I can spread the word.
Absolutely. And also if you know of a young person who maybe is hesitant to apply or doesn't have a resume, please contact us directly, because we're open to working with young people through the application process as well. But yeah, I'll email you the flyer.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Powers. Thank you, Estelle. I bring this up because, for all the previous points, but Kyoka just put a situation, a case where a young man was 16, was arrested 3 times for gun possession. He shot a kid in front of a school, but like you stated, the judge are not able to see prior arrest. So I'm not, a lot of this is the programs, and Commissioner O'Donnell, who spoke at the street meet, was very clear in the programs needed after they get caught using a gun or with a gun. And I'm not that familiar with it. So I like to familiarize myself. That's why I was asking these questions, because we definitely need a change or something has to happen, because otherwise, unfortunately, what will happen is exactly what I'm telling you. These older gang members keep their hands clean and use our kids as weapons, pushing them on to be as violent as possible. And that's what we're trying to prevent in one way or another.
I can tell you our data from 2021 shows that we had a very small percentage of the people arrested for just straight gun possession, not for use, certainly not for shooting, but just for straight gun possession. We had a very small percentage of those that were coming into the adult system were under 18. it was surprising to me because I thought that number would be higher. But now we don't have the 2022 data yet, but on 2021 and next time we meet, I can tell you what those numbers were. It was a small percentage though.
And is that for the whole city or just for our community?
That's for Manhattan, all of Manhattan.
I know that, Marissa has a question. Xavier, do you have, our chair, Xavier Santiago's here. Do you have a question in regards to this or just a question in general?
A question in general to the presentation from our district attorney's presentation. I'll let Marissa go, and then if you don't mind, you can circle back.
Of course, Marissa and then Xavier. Marissa, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. So good evening, everyone. My name is Marissa Mack. I'm the chair of the Economic Development and Culture Committee for Community Board 11. I hope you are all well. And I'm happy to hear about some of the initiatives that will be put into play, especially around 125th Street. Also just wanted to applaud your office for the Small Business Task Force. So we have Carrie King from our community that is the liaison for that and has been reporting on some information as it relates to businesses and the economic culture of not only 125th Street, but of the area in general. So one thing that I just wanted to mention, and hopefully this is something that will get carried over into your office and further the discussion on this topic, was combining the gun buyback program with a possible job fair, or having other resources at the buyback, right? So that it's not just a buyback situation, but then you're also catching these individuals at a point where you're able to then have conversations about what else can happen outside of just getting money for these guns, which, you know, honestly, it's a great thing, but then also they can use that money to then go buy guns again, or engage in that again, right? So I think just having, when you're gathering individuals, just having other resources available at that time when you're capturing you know, people from various backgrounds, various areas, I think that that's a great time to capture them and talk about other things that could happen and other positive avenues for them at the time of the initiation. So just wanted to bring that up. And then also too, and going back to a little bit what Diane spoke about, the need to engage the owners of the organizations and the individuals that are actually running the organizations. I think that's where a lot of this conversation needs to be, and in terms of thinking about what else can be done besides just having individuals come to get whatever services they need and then, you know, just go back out oftentimes to re-engage with some of the same, you know, areas that they, you know, were going in for in terms of treatment or services or what have you, and figuring out how that's impacting not only businesses, but residents, developments. We have a library coming to 125th Street, which has, you know, wonderful amenities, but there are a lot of things that are needed besides just, you know, conversations about what the organizations are doing. There also needs to be a conversation around how this is impacting businesses that live there, the Metro North transportation, people going from 125th Street in the Metro North to, you know, the subway line. Like, there's a lot that's there. And so I'm happy to hear that this conversation is happening. Just want to know that there is going to be engagement from all different areas and all different pinpoints. And I feel like there should be maybe some roundtable discussions as it relates to not only 125th Street, but as it relates to quality of life overall for this area. I've been in this community not as long as many people on here. It's been about 11 years, but I'm coming from the west side of Harlem, where you know, things are very different, and this area needs some help. We need help. We need assistance. We need all hands on deck, and it's from all different areas. So as Diane spoke about, you know, and she stated, Jose stated, you know, we have our officers from the 23rd and the 25th come every single week to report on things that are going on. This area needs some help and some attention. And we need to figure out like how we spread out some of these services and what that looks like, because this has been a conversation for as long as I've been on the board, and I'm sure even before that. And I mean, something has to happen. So I just wanted to make that note. Happy that things are turning, the wheels are turning in terms of conversations and how everyone can be engaged. But I do think that it's a all hands on deck. How can, everybody be involved in this conversation to kind of solve some of the concerns and the issues that are going on. And also want to thank Yoga because she's very much involved in trying to bring everyone to the table for these types of conversations. So that is my comment. Thank you, Xavier, for yielding to me for my comment on this topic. But yeah, hoping that DA Bragg and all of you here are able to kind of bring some light to this issue in this area. So, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marissa. Just to say one thing that we are exploring to your first point about gun buybacks is we're exploring an opportunity for gun buyback in exchange for college. So in a partnership with St. Francis College to see how we can do that work. And so anyway, stay tuned. I think it's very, very possible.
That's awesome. That is awesome. But it's the perfect opportunity to speak to, whoever's there when they're already turning in, some of these guns. So perfect. Thank you.
Marissa, I'd love to talk to you some more about that idea. One of the issues is that a lot of the people at the gun buybacks, when they're coming, they have a hard time trusting that it is actually anonymous. So they're not really there to talk. They, in fact, now with masks and stuff, some of them are coming, really covered, and they just want to drop off the gun and get out of there because they don't necessarily trust for sure that there's not something more going on to it. So great idea. And we've actually tried before having like resource tables. And the one that we just did the one that Jordan mentioned that we just did this past weekend was the first time we did it. We were able to do it with a community-based organization who was there and available to talk to people if they wanted. But it's a challenge. So I won't take up more time on it, but if you're interested in kind of exploring ideas on what that could look like, I'd love to follow up with you for the next guy.
And I think even just having information there, you never know how that touches someone, right? So like, even if you have a resource table, you have information, someone may just pass by and that might spark something for later on and you don't even know what it's doing, right? Or what it's not doing. And so as long as people are seeing things, you don't want to push them. And I understand what you're saying, people don't want to feel tricked into, okay, this is what it is, but it's really something else. Totally get that. But I also think that, when you have, people in front of you that may be hard to get from whatever area, right, or from whatever background, that you kind of grab whatever you can at that moment to seize it and see what else is available.
So let's talk some more at some point and get your ideas on what that could look like, because I think we could do better in that area. And we are planning another one in Harlem soon. So I'd love to get your ideas, but we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
I was going to say that's a great idea. And I think, yeah, I'm sorry, we've worked together with High Harlem. Yeah, like Mikey likes it ice cream. There's some places that hire formerly incarcerated individuals too. So I think it'd be really interesting to showcase those. Not that everyone turning in a gun is formerly incarcerated or justice impacted, but it'd be nice to say, here's some jobs that specifically do hire, folks with records. So I think that's a great idea. We do want to partner with a bunch of community organizations on our gun buybacks to get the word out there. We partnered with 100 Black Men before, and we're looking for other organizations to partner with churches. So we want to ensure that the whole community knows about this opportunity. I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. We'll definitely be in contact. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. And now we have Xavier, our chair.
First, thank you very much, everyone in the committee and from the DA's office for attending, and those that have any question, no relation with Stella Striker Santiago. Santiago's like a Smith. Little humor, very little. The reality, what we're seeing here, and I want to bring up a handful of issues and here, the concerns within the community, right? What are the issues we can all connect on collaboratively to adjust and redirect our focus? If you've spoken at any length with our precincts, there's a bit of demoralization going on. They're frustrated. There is a bit of a revolving door. For example, up in the 25th, they have had an increase in shootings. I did a walkthrough on Friday on 124th and Lex, what was a K2 dealer to dealer. 125th and Park, I believe, if I recall correctly, was also a dealer to dealer. we take that into consideration. We've also discussed what I'm hearing, if I'm to presume correctly, is that we need to revisit legislatively discovery and reform within bail reform, and how we can give access, because my understanding was, having spoken to a few prosecutors in the Bronx, was that the judges can see it, the prosecutors are privy to it, can see it, they can't use it. No party can use it, whether it's in family court or not. But they are aware of it. It just can't be utilized in while hearing the case. Whether that is true or not is somewhat moot, but the fact is that what I'm hearing from everyone in this conversation, that we have to take the initiative with elevating it to our legislators to have a more holistic approach. What appetite is there from the DA's office to work to that end, to where we can fill in the gaps? Because obviously, as we've seen over the past 2 years, and again, we're focused here within our northern district of East Harlem, overlapping with a bit of our sister district, Community District 10, and I've had conversations with our chair over there, Cicely Harris. We're dealing with an issue that has more commonality with the South Bronx, for example, than it does with Community District 8 and the Upper East Side. So I guess what appetite is from the DA's office to, one, work together to adjust legislation, and what areas of that legislation in DA Bragg's mind need to be adjusted. So it's a twofold question there. And then the second bit is, to what degree will they be enforcing issues such as not, and if you touched on this, but again, reiterating it, weapon possession in this great city of ours. If you have a gun on you, unless you are registered, which means you are keeping the firearm and the ammunition in two separate locked cases, as required by law, you're most likely have nefarious intent. So what enforcement will be applied fully, and then and by extension of that, because of the uptick in violence we're seeing in the northern part of Community District 11, that is related to drug paraphernalia and hand-to-hands that we're seeing, which are also being skirted similarly by understanding the amount of possession and stating that you're a user versus a dealer. How is that going to be applied through the office?
So I'll
Loaded, I know.
Yeah, so I might forget all the questions, but wait, I just want to get so I'll start with the legislation point. I think you mentioned discovery, and discovery, just to know, bail reform and discovery are two separate things, focusing on discovery, and that's one of the biggest impediments. And I want to be really clear, the district attorney and this office very much believes that people should have access to all of the paperwork that is relevant to their case, so that they can properly defend themselves. I want to make that very, very clear. Where we are with the way the discovery bill is now, that should you miss some document, because although under the law, constructively, it's in our control, it's also in the control of the police department, other city agencies, and we have to get it all, we have to gather it, working with police department, very good partners towards this end. But as you can imagine, you could miss one note that actually has nothing specifically to do with this case. So there could be an officer that shows up at a scene, doesn't take a note. We don't know that they're necessarily there, but they have a memo book to say they responded and that they left, but nothing that goes to the actually, from an evidentiary point of view, goes to the incident. And if we missed, I'm saying memo book, but if we missed that note, or that the fact that they responded, then that could have an adverse inference and the case could be dismissed. So I think we would legislatively to say something that would be if something was left out that was not in good faith, and that it was adverse to the person charged, then that would be a change that we would be interested in making, that if something that is missing doesn't have an adverse or prejudicial impact on the person charged, that would be a really positive change in the legislation. Gun enforcement, your next question, around gun enforcement. So as you said, there's a mandatory minimum and everybody presents themselves with different circumstances to the office, and people carry weapons for very, very different reasons. And it has been shown, as I think Jordan opened up in his presentation, that to address gun violence is really to approach it from those focused deterrence, which is a theory of policing and a theory of prosecution that we follow, completely consistent with the police department. And so that is how we will be approaching enforcement of weapons charges, consistent with looking for who's driving the violence, who is actually causing harm, and making sure that they're not part of community. And then the dealer cases. So I have to say, for those cases, we don't really handle many of those cases. We're, as you know, the special narcotics prosecutor is, if people aren't aware, there's a special narcotics prosecutor that covers all the 5 the city counties, boroughs. And so most of those cases, I believe, go to the special narcotics prosecutor. We don't really have many of those sort of buy and bust cases and those dealer cases. But not to, if people are suffering or people are doing it for profit, it will certainly be handled one way. And if they're doing it because they're a user and they're suffering from a substance use disorder, then it will be handled a different way, which I think is what your question was.
So to clarify, and we'll go back in reverse order, is that with the H to H, so hand to hand, the part of that was impacted by the change in legislation. So again, they understand that it's better to store their stash of paraphernalia and then distribute. And if picked up, oh, I'm holding this for a friend, or I picked this up for a friend. So again, we're hearing a theme, as was discussed during the presentation, is that there is an ability to skirt the system.
Right, but you can definitely tell. You can tell who's a dealer and you can tell who's a user. I mean, that you can tell from you get a good idea, I should say, from the cases about who is a user and who's a dealer.
I think he's saying it wrong. I think what happens is that now the dealers are allowing the users to sell for them. And so they're no longer, that's different, right? And so I think
that's an agency. So that's a different case where there's an agency issue, yes.
So I also think, and I'm done, but I think, I think when we're talking about legislation, right? I think it is a comprehensive overview of the bail reform, raise the age and all of that, because I think what I don't understand is, and Xavier, if I'm wrong, because we talk about this all the time, is are the legislators thinking about what's actually happening in our communities and basing laws off of that, and then allowing you guys to prosecute in that way? Because what I see and what I sit in the precinct and look at is our officers' hands are tied. So sometimes for me, it's like, and I'm not an officer. I don't work for the NYPD, but I'm thinking in my head, like, why would I go out there and try and make an arrest when nothing gonna happen anyway? That's my thought process. I'm not saying my officers, not any of the officers would do that, but if they don't, if we're not thinking about legislation in a way that positively impacts the community, then that's the reason why I asked the first question that I asked. Is this meeting about what is the details of this meeting? Because I think that if we're going to present things, it has to be that we're also thinking about a way to allow the legislators to understand that the community's concerns is A, B, and C.
So it's interesting that you say that. So the person who proposed the bail reform and the discovery legislation is Latrice Walker, who comes from Brownsville, Brooklyn, who's experienced really both sides of this. I know she's lost a brother to gun violence, and she lives in a community that's heavily, heavily impacted by incarceration. And so in seeing the devastation and that incarceration can have on a community, I think that was the impetus behind the bail reform legislation and the discovery legislation. As far as bail reform, they did amend the statute. And I think it will be really, when we are able to have that full meeting of getting into the details of how it works, I think it will be really helpful for us to get your specific input when we lay out how the law works. Discovery is a different story because it actually has, discovery has a different impact on just the procedure of how a case moves forward, and that's a different story. And raise the age is the reason that raise the age. First of all, New York, and I forget the other state, maybe North Carolina, were the only 2 of the 50 states that didn't have the Asian majority at 18. And the reason behind raise the age is because of a much better understanding now in the present to how how a young person's brain develops and the ability of actually to impact change in that person. And so that was the impetus behind both, obviously for young people, but also young adults, and about how the ability there is for reform, and how just from a biological point of view, they are so susceptible to peer pressure. They are so susceptible to impulsive behavior, but with correction, there's so much evidence to show that you can change, through cognitive behavioral therapies and other therapies, you can actually change that behavior and really put them on a trajectory for which I'm sure, I certainly have done plenty of dumb things when I was young. Now I'm old, but and there's actually a pathway forward for them to actually positively be part of community. And so there was such devastation about the way that the law impacted communities that, and if you look at, there's a great, and we should share at the next meeting, there was a great report done by the Brennan Center to show the impact of even just a misdemeanor charge, just a misdemeanor, no jail, what that means on your economic ability and economic mobility and social mobility going forward. And then felonies, of course, I think it was a 50% reduction in your earning ability. So I think all of this legislation combined with the science, or I should say the science combined with research that has been done, is what has informed the legislation. Now, do we have a ton of work to do as far as the situations that have been discussed tonight? Yes, we need to sit down and we need to see, are there things that we can do that I'm not sure any of this legislation impacts, like the loitering in the buildings isn't because of bail reform or discovery or raise the age. I can tell you under the law before, if somebody was arrested for loitering, they would still be out. That person would not be going to jail. So we need to have solutions that actually get at the root of it. And I would just sort of echo what we hear the mayor saying all of the time, upstream. And Jose, when you were mentioning about the young people who are carrying weapons, you have 13 and 14-year-olds. What is the investment that we're making in the community for them in schools and for programs? So that is not like, we need to go upstream, just as Mayor Adams has said, like, how do we get the investment earlier so that kids, I mean, these are babies, are not in this situation. And that's what we have to, how do we shift the money that is spent on incarceration? I mean, I'm sure you've all heard where it costs, and I'm not going to have this number correctly because I keep hearing it, but the latest number I heard was like $279,000 per year for somebody to be at Rikers Island. How do we take that investment and put it in a child at the front end for school and for housing and for enrichment? And so I think that, anyway, that's on this. It's so complicated, but I would have to just say that's where we need to go.
It's definitely the right direction, Meg. Thank you. Go ahead.
Right. So just to follow up, and I appreciate the position, Meg. And again, with a lot of those studies from an anthropomorphic point of view and physiological, biological, evolutionary state, a lot of them didn't address the fact that the human brain doesn't solidify its maturation process until the age of 25. So they didn't really address that. By the time, if you went through your normal track of going through your baccalaureate and into law school, by the time you were done and passed the bar, you were 25. So on a normal track. So I can, we're all too aware of that. And as a community that has definitely been hit heavily by incarceration, the altruistic measures and extension of it was well thought out. Unfortunately, there was a defunding process that occurred state and citywide that was not there as a counterbalance. This, again, we are all too aware of, but the appetite, and my query is, what is the appetite for us to bridge those gaps? Because there are gaps, because otherwise the 16-year-old in the Bronx who shot an officer during a scuffle, who had the gun on him, who had a prior at 14, had a record deal, I don't know if it was with Interscope, posted bail. Yeah. And the judge couldn't use the prior, but was aware of it. That got put out there. There's nothing in the bill that forced the offender to be redirected, which is what we all care about. Again, reinvesting assets into community intervention. So we're not, and again, it is a moment of crisis intervention care where we say, listen, you didn't get redirected where you needed to the first time. We need you to go in this. You have to now. You have to get into a program. You have to get in good hands so that you can have that behavioral cognitive intervention, if you will, depending on whatever the language of choice is for the day. So we're looking at the office's application, given a bit of the rough start we saw in January, and what will be applied as we determine what's impacting our community. As was noted at the beginning of the meeting, which you were present for, we've had an uptick in gun violence. There's an uptick in hand-to-hand. We're having to deal with the state level with OASIS. We have an extension of a resolution for a call for a moratorium in our community for additional safe injection sites, methadone clinics, et cetera, and the like, which the city was full aware of and still put the harm reduction clinic, which we're not unempathetic. We're very empathetic as a community and very caring, because many of us have suffered, as have our family members. However, we're not being listened to. So that's why I'm asking in a most direct fashion is what appetite to work with us where we see there are gaps in legislation, what appetite is there to work with our precincts to where they're saying, listen, why can't you move the ball down the field? What is the hurdle you have to reach before something could be prosecuted? Why are the judges not asking for any type of stopgaps? Again, so that's part of the broader question. If I could, that's where it is, because I think we're all aligned to be presumptuous, but again, we need to know the finer points.
Yeah, a giant appetite, Xavier. So we will sit down, we will listen and engage in conversation through all of this. We want to be at that table. We want to be invited to that table, and we want to have these conversations, and we want to work with you. The first priority. I mean, that is the number one priority of this district attorney.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, everyone from the district attorney's office.
Thank you, Xavier. And with that, looks like that was our last question. We purposely left a short agenda because we knew we were going to have a lot of questions. So at this point, I'd like to thank everyone from the district attorney's office for being here with us. We greatly appreciate your time. And we look forward to working with you and whatever we can to better improve our community and our city. Thank you for all the information you've given us. It's been very helpful. And I'm sure we'll be reaching out again to continue our relationship. And I know that Marco will be joining us on a monthly basis So we look forward to having him as well. So I want to thank Estelle, Meg, Jordan, Marco. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
having
much.
us.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you all. Take it easy. Have a good evening.
And now, before we move on to our committee discussion on congestion pricing, I wanted to give the floor to Jackie from DOT and her informational update. She also wanted to speak about the walkthrough that we had on 96th Street. Jackie, are you still with us?
Yes, hi, Jose. Yes, I'm still on. Hey, everyone. Just very quickly, I know Jose had mentioned that we did have a walkthrough on 96th Street a little bit ago to see, priority corridors. And just as a quick follow-up, I did want to just go through some of the things that we noted. And Jose, please feel free to chime in if there's anything you think we're missing. So during our walkthrough, we did notice that there were a few intersections that were missing countdown clocks. And this was at the intersections of 96th Street and First Avenue and Third Avenue that were missing. So we're gonna put requests in to have signal timing countdown clocks put in. And then there was also a request to add a leading pedestrian interval on 96th Street at the intersections of 96 and 3rd Avenue and 96 and Lexington. And then we also wanted to put in a traffic signal request for the intersection of 120th Street and Pleasant Avenue. I just wanted to confirm, Jose, if there was anything else that you remember, or if we missed anything by any chance.
That sounds about right. And a lot of the improvements that we've seen already on 96th Street, as we move forward to 106, 116, 125th, and further on, we're hoping to continue to push and have all those improvements also installed in the rest of our community. That's our goal. So we're gonna set up the next walkthrough, which will be 106th Street. Luckily, it'll be significantly better weather because that day, Jackie and myself were about to pass out from the cold, but it was still a great walkthrough for the information that we received. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you at the next walkthrough.
Thank you. We're going to move on to congestion pricing. As you heard previously, this is Dawn. Go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, I had a question for Jackie, because I'm on First Avenue between 111 and 112, and we've had some site survey folks out there. And last week, the site survey people told us that there was going to be either a two-way bike lane or concrete barriers on First Avenue. And so I heard someone ask earlier, when are we notified of these things? And so for us to have to speak to the people on the street doing the site survey, what's happening? I mean, I would like to know ahead of time, are you planning on putting two-lane bike lanes on First Avenue, or is it the concrete barriers? Because we're not getting that information, not by flyers, not by meeting, not by hearing. We get that information from the people on the street or after the activities are taking place. So if you know of what your plans are for our community, hopefully you consulted with the Americans with Disabilities Act ahead of time about the concrete barriers, but it would be great to hear what your plan is.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Dawn, but where are you talking about? First Avenue? I thought we already
First
had
Avenue. Yes, but there were site survey folks measuring, taking measurements, because I heard it's been in the news that there is going to be that half the bike lanes in the city are going to be made permanent using concrete barriers. So that was in the news, and there's no information on who's going to be the first community. So in front of my building, there were people taking measurements. I think
But,
last Tuesday.
First,
And
that's strange, because First Avenue has what's considered a protected bike lane already. By
No, we're
that
talking-
meaning,
okay.
meaning that it's inside of, it's on the left-hand side, on the west side. And it's after where the vehicles park.
Well, the folks out there working told us that it was there, that either, because they weren't completely clear, either there's going to be a 2-lane bike lane on First Avenue and they're going to remove the bike lane on Second Avenue, or there are going to be concrete barriers, and they're taking measurements.
But there's already a bike lane on First Avenue.
I know they're talking about a concrete barrier, Jose, a concrete barrier that allows 2 lanes of bike traffic on First Avenue where there is currently bike traffic.
Yeah,
Jackie,
Dawn,
do you
I'm
have any
actually
information on
not.
this?
Yeah, I'm not really aware of this particular project, but I can definitely check in with Lyle and get back to Jose and the rest of the board. It does sound like it may also be part of the the bike lane protection program, where we're adding concrete barriers to protect what we're considered protected bike lanes. But I can definitely check in and get back to you.
Please get back to all of us, because the fact of the matter is our building has a number of people who rely on Accessoride and other ways to get into the building, and a concrete barrier with a 2-way bike lane. You know, I don't hope you guys don't try to just slip that past us without discussing the ramifications, because further south on First Avenue, a pastor of a church came and it told us that the bike lane has kept elderly people from walking into the church safely. And nobody really has a problem with that. And I have a problem with that, because what's happening now, if there's going to be protected bike lanes, concrete barriers, then that means you weren't listening at all when people said, hey, right now we can't even get into our churches safely. We can't get to the supermarket. We can't get into the Accessoride. We can't get into an ambulance safely. And so, and it looks like we're just pushing ahead with more infrastructure that has not been vetted. No analysis has gone into this. And, you know, I just can't say how frustrating it is to have to walk outside and ask people who work for the DOT what the heck is about to happen to the street. So that's
Thank you,
all
Dawn.
I
I'm
have to
definitely gonna
add.
take that back and get some more clarification information for you. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Jackie. We'll definitely look into that. Not exactly sure what they're trying, but I'm definitely interested in knowing what's going to happen. Let's move on forward. Now we have a committee discussion on congestion pricing. As you saw earlier, we have to have any comments in by next month. Congestion pricing will start off at, I believe, 60th Street. It will affect anyone passing 60th Street going into what's considered the Central District. The first phase of congestion pricing started a few years ago, where they charged anyone doing transportation, anyone taking a cab, particularly, whether it's yellow, black car service, going past 96th Street, there's an automatic $275 charge. I, however, believe that the charge that's going forward on 60th is going to be significantly higher. I've heard different numbers, but somewhere in the anywhere from $7 to $11. We know that our community board south of us, CB8, and other community boards affected are weighing in heavily. However, this will affect us or any of our community going to downtown who's driving. We don't have, we wanted to know if we wanted to discuss it, see what the committee thought about. So I'm open to any questions. Marissa?
Yes, so just a quick question. I just wanted to make sure. So if people are coming coming on or into the city through the FDR Drive, this would not impact them. Is that correct? Is it only
I'm not sure on
certain
that question,
avenues?
because currently the way phase was when implemented, as soon as you pass 96th Street, even if it's in the FDR, you were being charged. So I'm not completely sure. I don't have that. That's a good
All right.
question. We can find out.
Okay, all right. Okay. That was my only question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don?
Yeah, I was actually concerned about how people currently and will in the future get to medical appointments, and whether or not they would be subject to the same fees, because most medical appointments take place during the times when we're trying to slow down the congestion of traffic. And I just wonder how do we get around persecuting people because they are not able-bodied and therefore have to take a cab or a car to a medical appointment or surgery.
I believe that the CAS will continue to be $275. A private vehicle, I mean, parking below 60th Street is very difficult or very expensive in a parking lot. Not
No, I
sure.
just
Well,
mean
yes,
in a
the
cab.
cabs do charge. The cabs do charge.
Yeah, the cabs are charging $275, but the charge that
Yes.
we're talking about now, from my understanding, will be significantly higher.
Yeah.
Somewhere
Now,
in
what
that range
happens?
of $7 to $11. So if someone is driving downtown, let's say Judith is going downtown, this charge will be implemented. And my understanding, it will be a toller's charge. They're going to put up Easy Pass cameras. As soon as a vehicle passes through, it will grab your plate, send you. If you have Easy Pass, it will charge your Easy Pass, and if you don't, then it'll push it through.
Well, I took a cab on Friday downtown, and I was charged the fee. But
Hey,
my other concern is, what about people driving into the city? So that is going to be hard for, people will probably park up here and then either take a train or something else downtown so that they avoid that fee.
That is a discussion we've been having in regards to getting even parking permits, localized parking permits, in regards to that. And now that this is going into effect, it is becoming a more concerning scenario. But
Parking right now is very difficult
no,
up
I
here.
understand, but like the comments will, this is something that we can add to the comments that, our concern, an after effect of congestion pricing will be that our community parking may be used by people traveling down and then taking public transportation in order to avoid those expensive tolls. At the same time, finding parking in our community as it is very difficult. I'm not sure if that's a long term, if someone driving in every day is realistically doing that. We have a question by Michelle, and then I'm not sure if Marissa has her hand back up but go ahead, Michelle, and then we'll find out Marissa, Dawn, Xavier.
I don't know if it's a question or more comment. The whole congestion pricing for the lower part of Manhattan is, the discussion of the us versus them, I know we've had quite a bit, because it is dividing the city into, it is dividing us versus them, and it is saying that the lower part of Manhattan is supposedly the place that everybody wants to go. However, the upper part of Manhattan will be extremely affected. And how are we going to voice our opinion on saying, this is, as you can tell, I am not for congestion pricing. I am not for how it's going to affect my community with the over parking that is already overly congested. The upper part of Manhattan is also congested. Why just think that the lower part of Manhattan is is the place where extra money should go into. Because what is going to happen with these extra fundings? That's going to be raised. The fund's going to go to the lower part of Manhattan. It's not going to be distributed to the ward's entire city, making it further a division between us versus them.
Well, this is part of the conversation, Michelle. I mean, we are actually able to give in comments as a community board, as our public safety and transportation, which is why we started the discussion this month, so we can formulate these comments, put them together, and submit them. We have until next month to submit them. This is still a process, so anything submitted will be heard. So, this is part of why we're having this conversation, and anything you have in regards to in favor or against is absolutely heard. I mean, I am not a fan of congestion pricing either. As it is, we don't get much. The MTA is a state agency that has tremendous funds and has all this money coming in from bridges, and it doesn't give the public any information how they use their funding or anything else. And yet they always need money. I mean, if you look at it, they are consistently under budget, right? Or over budget, whatever terminology may be. This is an MTA issue. It'll go through Easy Pass and everything else. So that's why we're having this discussion, in regards to this. And it will definitely affect our community, because there will be some people that will probably stay in our community and then take a train down. Dawn, do you have your hand raised? Or Michelle, did you have a secondary comment?
I said it's just more so a comment, not necessarily a question.
No, a comment is fine. Remember, this is a discussion. So it's not a question here. We're actually, a comment is what we're looking for. Dawn, and then Xavier.
Yeah, so, I'm really more concerned that a lot of these measures, they turn into sort of like a poverty tax for people. And, it's been said, the plan is to remove cars from Manhattan. Everybody's like, that's the whole idea, get rid of cars. But it's really not getting rid of cars. It's just putting more pressure on people who are poor, because there are people who cannot get on a bike to go to Columbia Presbyterian or what used to be Beth Israel on 14th Street. They're going to have to rely on a car service. And so, to charge them the extra $7 to $11 is a big deal, whereas to charge someone who already has a ton of money and they take cabs and all that. So it's really it's a charge on it's basically, I don't know, it seems like a cab charge, because it's basically saying that if you're not able-bodied and you can't walk up and down subway steps and that sort of thing, or you have a surgery or you have to go to see a doctor, you are going to pay that toll is going to hit you. And I'm just concerned about that, especially with DOT putting in concrete barriers and, just to dissuade people from having a car. Okay, yes, people will get rid of their cars, but then they're going to be dependent on taking a cab where they can't get on a bus or a bike to go to. And I just feel like it's just so clear that only certain groups of people are going to be affected by this. And it's not really for everybody to stop driving. It's really for some people to stop driving. And I don't think that's fair. So that's my comment.
I do agree with you, Dawn. Definitely economics will play into this. Most metropolitan cities that put congestion pricing, prior to putting congestion pricing, they enable all their public transportation to be accessible, all their subways to have elevators, our buses for the most part are all accessible, but our subways are yet to be accessible. I think it's a little premature, but they're pushing forward, and obviously money, collecting money is definitely a prime reason behind it. We have Dawn, so we have Xavier, then Diane Collier, and we have Metternich Clements.
So a couple things, and Diane, if you would like to go ahead, and then I'll say a few words before we go to the public, if that's fine with you, Jose.
Sure.
So I'm going to echo pretty much what Michelle had said, the over parking, because that basically happens now and there's no congestion pricing in place where they park close to a transportation location and they jump on the bus or jump on the train. My understanding is that they're going to have cameras posted on the highways to capture, I guess, that point where it starts to go 275 or whatever. I don't know how, yeah, that's originally when they started talking about congestion pricing. The other issue is because we're going to be impacted by this, what kind of, are we getting any of these revenues? Are they going to pour more into our communities for pollution issues and noise issues? Because all of that's going to happen because, and should we be asking for that? And then the other concern I had was, basically, I think that's it. I forgot the other one that I had. It'll probably come to me. So that's my concern. The real concern is parking. We barely can park now. Oh, that's what I wanted to ask. Is it possible for the residents who live here to get a different color sticker that notes that these are residents compared to somebody coming into the community and lives elsewhere, and therefore they should be paying more for that registered, whatever, stamp that goes on their car?
That would be resident parking, which is something we've spoken about here, which we continue to hopefully work on.
Yeah, that's my point, because
which would be
and the
giving
last one was-
priority
yeah,
to like anyone that actually lives in East Harlem.
right. And the other issue is the bus service is lousy. I mean, I'm sure you all have risen the bus. And you're right, Dawn, to get to where you have to go, you literally have to be up almost an hour, 2 hours ahead to get where you want to go. And so are they going to improve on the bus, the local public services? That's the other issue.
That's
We were-
correct.
We were supposed to have the Manhattan bus redesign, the same way that they're implementing the Bronx redesign. However, COVID has slowed the process, and I've asked to see when that's starting again. But we'll definitely partake in that when that does come our way. But I have so far over parking, economic inequality, situation with the FDR or West Side Highway, is that charged as soon as you pass? Was any money pushed toward our community, which is doubtful? I mean, they don't even really say how they spend their money now. So, I mean, this is the MTA. But, and we have resident parking. These are what I have so far. Xavier?
Yes, thank you everyone who's commented on this, and I'm glad to hear we're of like mind on many of the issues. I joined the task force with CB8, our sister community board to the south, and they definitely have their hackles up about it. And I think the larger thing that we've touched on is what are the economic proceeds going to be? So that's a question we need to ask. Our borough president, he and I, since we met in 2015, after I returned from abroad, very interested in community parking. We have seen an uptick, and especially during COVID, and we are seeing a very slow return to the use of public transportation. But the whole resident parking permit and an interest in a borough parking permit has been invigorated. I think the question we have to ask ourselves is the knock-on effect, and I think it was raised earlier. I have a neighbor on 101st who is on a disposable income of just over 60,000, which is a lot of money. However, it's a pension from her husband, and she's on Social Security. However, her doctor moved from this neighborhood to Chinatown, and now she would have to cross not just 96, but also 60th to go into that neighborhood to receive care. And so that's just one of many examples. And as all of you know, I'm an avid animal lover. Let's say you have animal care center, which is within the zone as well. If you go and travel into the zone for emergency service and care, it does impact our community at large, and penalizes many of us for which are obviously living at a lower local AMI, although being a federal measurement, it's for our community, it would be an impact. And I think to the further point that Jose that you mentioned is that the reinvestment within our communities for having accessibility for public transportation is extremely limited. And although the second phase of the Second Avenue subway will begin, it is the sixth line, the 4, 5, and 6, is nowhere near to the level it should be to accommodate the needs of those with disabilities. So I think that I think the resident parking permit, along with the congestion pricing, they all are interconnected. And I think if we are going to make a comment, I think we should weigh in on how it's going to impact Upper Manhattan. And whatever this committee, when they weigh everything out and discuss it and take note, I would recommend you speaking to your counterparts on this committee with 9, 10, and 12, who having spoken and had a chair meeting, they are very eager for the committee chairs of their respective committees to public safety and transportation and the like to start working together to find out, to discuss each other's positions to find where there's commonality. So that's the general comment on it. And I've not received an email on when the next task force meeting will be, but Jose, if you or any member of this committee would like to also partake in that, I will loop you in to shoot me an email.
Thank you. Please, Xavier. Xavier, you've had conversations with CB8, our neighbors to the south. Do you know of any of their positions? I read some of their, but you may have better understanding.
I think I forwarded a resolution they had taken.
They had very extensive resolutions, which were overly complicated, and just the language used was, I don't know if everyone's a lawyer in CBA, but I was like, this is
it's well worth a read. And if this committee would like to invite one of the co-chairs of that task force to attend and I'm sure they would be more than willing. And I can reach out to the two co-chairs and see if someone would be willing to maybe even come this month to executive to present.
Yeah, that would be good at executive, because we have a time crunch.
Yeah, so I think that's something we can do, and they're more than willing to engage. I think ultimately I'd like with this committee and our board to look at it as a long-term impact on the community and how it's going to affect us. And I think Diane and Dawn and several others, yourself included, have all opined on what the impact will be, how immediate it will be, but then we need to look beyond 5, 10, 15 years. So I'll reach out and we'll circle back. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. We have one more question from committee member Michelle, and then we'll have a question from the public, Metternich Clemens. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, again, it is not a question, it is a comment.
A comment is perfect.
Thank you. I have noticed that the PA would increase the price of their writing tokens or card or whatever you want to say, anytime that any new gizmo is implemented. So the price of the putting up the different cameras to have the congestion pricing implemented will be directly affected by an increased pricing that we will be, not necessarily the $7 or $11 for the congestion prices, but also the base price of riding the subway or riding the buses usually increases when something happens like this. I would like to add to keep the price at where it is now for a certain amount of years, so that it's not a double whammy sort of, oh, you have to go here, the prices increase, and you have to pay congestion prices. That would just be a slap on either side of the cheek. That is my comment. Hello?
Michelle, could you Repeat that to me. I don't know if I didn't understand it or maybe I got lost.
Oh, okay. I was saying that usually when there is a project where enhancements are being done for the MTA, such as whatever enhancement, there's an increase in price to ride the bus or the subway.
Well, this is supposed to, I mean, they'll never reduce it, but they shouldn't increase it because this is going to add a considerable amount of funds to the MTA. They've never done this before. They would be charging every car that passes 60th Street. I mean, the number of cars, it's astronomical. Every day, there are going to be few exceptions. I believe cabs and taxis, and these are going to be accepted because they're already paying a congestion of 275. But if you're taking a private vehicle, I also have to look into if trucks and any other vehicle are exempted. I'm not sure the exact exemptions.
I don't
but
think
they shouldn't be. I believe. I mean, it would be highly, highly ridiculous of them to raise a bus and trains when they are going to putting this in place for fundraising, basically.
I
At least
know
that's my position. It doesn't mean that they may not try, but I guess we should keep an eye on that.
so that's why I'd like to, in any letter that we write, to make sure that that is added, saying, please do not increase the fare. Have it at a certain level for a certain amount of time, please. That is what
future fare increases. Got you. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to Metternich Clemens, public member. Angel, if you could.
Hello. My name is Metternich Clemens. I've seen me around a bunch of times, but just wanted to let everybody know that I've been working on a resource for the committee. You're probably familiar with it. I've talked about it all the time. It's called Formalized Public Discourse, and it essentially just a set of rules that I was researching that I created to govern certain conversations on different kinds of issues, and congestion pricing is one of them. Not trying to infringe on how anybody talks about it, but if you want to talk about it in a more rigorous sense, where all the sentences that participate in this discourse have to abide by certain kinds of rules. Rules like every sentence has to tell us the conditions in which it's false. Every sentence has to tell us the implications for current and new residents if we would accept the sentence as meaningful. And every sentence that makes future claims has to be very specific about those kind of claims. You could definitely check that out. Again, obviously, we hope to encourage your committee to move in the direction that sentences should have rules when they're generated about a certain kind of topic, so that we can see the rules they use to talk about society and if they're good or not, and then see if the statements abide by those rules. But just a resource that hoping that committee members consider when they're talking about congestion pricing, because the conversation obviously has tremendous ramifications, and having a rigorous dialogue about it where sentences abide by certain kinds of expectations, I think could kind of help us keep it accountable and make sure that everybody's interests are satisfied. So I just want to share that comment with everybody, and thank you.
Thank you, Metternich. I will put my public safety email so you can forward me that, so I'll take a look. Curious. I'm saying that we may necessarily do or not do it, but I am open to having a look at it.
Yeah, just share your email, that'd be great.
Public safety CB. All right, it's in the thing, so send it to me there. Thank you. Xavier, you had a question, or that was your hand raised previously?
No, it's one more additional comment.
Oh, go
one
ahead,
of the things
please.
that was discussed with the task force is that if you had, say, you lived in the zone below 60th Street, and you had your car there, and you had, say, for example, mobility issues, and you were to travel north to go pick up a prescription, say that, or visit a physician, again, we're giving as a reference, and then went back in, you would be charged, right? And you already live in that district. The other thing that I think Michelle was getting at was that, again, about the penalization for those that live within the borough, those that within the lower socioeconomic bands. I think that could potentially be penalized when what they're trying to do is decrease the vehicular traffic within that core area. And I think in that conversation, one of the things to relay, and you and I had a separate phone call post task force meeting, was the reality is they're trying to base this modeling over what they've done in London, right? And you have London Center, which is different than the way the island of Manhattan at 12 miles in length. It doesn't really fit the same parallel as a model. And so I think there is an argument to be made if this committee desires to take a position or to, as we discussed at executive, that perhaps we entertain and simultaneously a resident and borough parking permit consideration as a way to offset any particular negative financial impact that could be experienced down the line. And I think that was referenced earlier with Diane and talking about, hey, is there a way to get some kind of permit up in our district to prevent people who are monopolizing and taking spaces here who don't actually reside here and using public transport? Now it is to be debated. And this is something that was debated at the task force, is like, how often is that really happening? However, in Community District 8, they're not experiencing that as much as we are in Upper Manhattan, because having the chair meeting with 9, 10, 11, 12, we are seeing this. People coming in from Westchester, Jersey, Pennsylvania, and then commuting. But again, something to be discussed, is there a way that we could, in a long-term fashion, if they're going to force it with and just take our thoughts in consideration, we say, hey, okay, fine. If you're going to go this way, then we need to have a resident parking permit, which permits us to be able to travel in and out of the borough without incurring such a drastically high cost if certain bars or hurdles are met. So that's the only other recommendation I would offer. But I've just emailed, and also find as well, Jose, I've emailed Alita Camp, who's one of the co-chairs at CB8's task force, to see if she can come attend our executive committee. So that's the update.
Perfect.
Have a good evening. Great meeting, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Xavier. I do agree that they're modeling this after London, but London took a lot of steps prior to doing congestion. They had their subway be accessible. I think it's a high percentage in the 90s. Their cabs are accessible. They had, and I think these are the steps that New York City is kind of stepping over. While
Agreed.
Our public transportation here in our community is horrendous, right? Our bus services are horrendous. So now people will depend on our buses even more, and yet there's still an issue with them. Okay, let's move forward. Committee review of mayor's preliminary budget for 2023. Angel, do we have a next slide or?
No, that's it.
Oh, so where's the budget? It was emailed to us, correct?
Yeah, I can share the screen that has the document that I shared if you'd like.
Please. I'm looking at it myself. Is there a deadline on this?
Yes, tonight.
Tonight is the deadline?
Yes.
9:30. All right, guys, stick in here. Whoever's left. Appreciate you all. And considering we had a very short agenda, but we were looking forward to having district attorney here. So let's go through this. These are. Right, so the ones on the left are 2022, or that was our request.
The leftmost column shows the tracking number for the fiscal year 23 budget. You do not have to go item by item. That's not necessary. Committee members have been through this a number of times over the years, should know how this exercise works. If there are any comments on the responses to the individual budget requests that came out of this committee, that you want to elevate in the written response that the board is going to put together to submit to the mayor, that can be discussed tonight. You guys can agree to that tonight. If you want to make, the committee, wants to make other comments related to the preliminary budget that the mayor put out, related to the work of this committee, that isn't specific to the budget request that we submitted in the fall, that could also be considered for inclusion in this committee section of the written response to the preliminary budget. Excuse me. So that's for you all to decide tonight. And the last thing is the committee could decide to offer testimony at the city council hearings on that will be looking at the agencies that correspond to the work of this committee. For example, the Department of Transportation, the MTA, and so forth. The Office of Criminal Justice, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. So if the board, if the committee wanted to submit testimony as a committee, can certainly do that. And then, of course, the individual members and remaining members of the public that are still on the call, if they wish to submit testimony as individuals, are certainly encouraged to do that. The calendar of city council committee hearings on the preliminary budget are available on the city council's website calendar. I checked today, some of the hearings have already started, but the bulk of them are still to come. I can share a link with the membership tomorrow morning on the rest of the meetings.
Looking at this, most of it is agency agrees with requests, but funding decisions follow different budget process. The first one with repair, provide new streetlights. Additional comment says that we can provide specific areas, which we do. And I believe in our district needs, we ask for particular areas. Is there a way to copy paste those particular areas here?
Was that a question to me? Yeah. So you can do that. There's one thing I left out in my comments. So as you'll see in the response category, where the agency category description, where it says agency requires additional information, or this, agency agrees, but funding decisions, where there are these vague responses, just to spare us all a bunch of time, and I've been telling my other committees the same thing. Don't get bogged down, lose hair, or let your hair go gray, agonizing, trying to decipher what these agencies are trying to say in these things. These are very clearly, and we've experienced this in the past, rote responses that they did not put a lot of thought into. My guess is that the administration is relatively new. So they didn't have the opportunity to spend much time on this. So instead of spending a lot of time trying to figure out what they were thinking, I would encourage the committee to just elevate the budget request that it wants to really push to the agency and to the mayor, and not worry itself or concern itself, is a better word, with how they worded these rote responses, if that helps.
Thank you, Angel. After all these years, Xavier, is that your hand up from previously or for this?
Hold hand, sorry, let me lower it.
Okay. Does the committee have any comments on what Angel just explained to us? Michelle?
Are we to fill in this additional comment part here? Are we? I just want to make sure that we complete our task for this evening. what exactly do we need to do with this chart that we have here?
Sure. So just to clarify, Michelle, and thank you for mentioning that. The additional comment is not for you all to fill in. That's part of the agency's fuller response. So in some sections where it gave the response of, for example, on the very first one, please contact the borough commissioner, it offers a bit more detail in the additional comment. That's the agency providing that. That's not for you all to fill in.
Okay. Because I mean, we spend a lot of time, just making these things over and over again and getting this blanket response. Our task tonight is to make more specifics or to find a way to just push forward with what we want and just add more information.
Like I said before, you're reasserting the positions that you stated in the fall. And if there needs to be things, if there are items that you all agree need to be elevated and pushed back in the response to the preliminary budget, then you all can agree on doing just that.
I know for a fact that in the very first one, repair, provide streetlights, we had provided more specific locations, and I forget where it is exactly. Maybe the district needs. We put exact streets. Part of their additional comments on their responses in regards to that, right, should provide specific areas within this district that feels warranted, additional repaired streetlights. So I believe that we should put those particular streets in this request. That makes sense?
It makes a complete sense. Also for the one where we asked for permits.
The fifth one.
Yeah.
The fifth one.
This one?
Yeah, fifth one. We're asking for provide funding to study the feasibility establishing a residential parking permit program in East Harlem.
I think we should make it stronger, saying just don't provide funding to study. Just give us the permits.
Yes.
We need it now because the congestional pricing thing is going to happen. We need the permits. Make the language stronger.
So then provide funding. We eliminate the study of feasibility and just provide funding to establish a residential parking permit program in East Harlem.
Complete.
Perfect. Don, you had your hand raised? Don?
I'm so sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. I started to get excited and talk without unmuting. But yeah, there's already pilots happening. So why can't we just go ahead and start a pilot? We already know what we need. The DOT is famous for putting pilots into our neighborhood that become permanent without our input. So then, you know what? Let's have a pilot where we go ahead and start the parking permit process just like Edonis did in his district.
So yeah, so the language for the fifth one we can change to provide funding to start a pilot establishing a residential parking permit program in East Harlem.
It already exists in other parts of the city, so let us join that.
That's what I'm saying. We'll skip the study and we'll go straight to implementing a pilot here. Sounds good?
I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Angel?
Jose, that's the end committee. That's fine, and that can go into the response of the preliminary budget. But to be clear, the language of the budget request is not changing at this stage. If you wanted to change that, that would be in the fall. But now in the response to these responses, then certainly that can be included and you can clarify.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Can we put that in the response for those two? I mean, the rest are agency agrees, but cannot be determined with funding. I mean, That's just language I can't really. They agree with most of what we want. Dawn, you had another comment, or is that an old hand?
Hold hand, sorry.
That's fine. You see, most of it says agency agrees. Common date. I mean, it looks like we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, just disregard that yellow highlighting. That was a mistake.
Perfect. So I think those two comments, Angel, we can put in our response to their responses, and then move forward.
Is that it?
Got it.
Okay. Any testimony or anything like that, or no?
What happened?
Are you guys going to talk about doing testimony or no?
How does this work? Does the
it's your
entire
guys' call.
board give testimony, or
The board's testimony is going to be the written response, right? But the individual committees can submit testimony if they choose, or the individual members can submit testimony.
do we have to establish that today, or we can work on that?
You could do it. It's ideal to do it in committee, but if you're going to do it offline, figure out a way that you're all are agreeing. Because if you're submitting it on behalf of the committee, you want to ensure that the rest of the committee members are on board with whatever's being submitted.
I'm pretty sure we've lost quorum. Well, actually, no, maybe not.
Check to make sure.
No, it's fine. I
You're
think
still
we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it offline. We're gonna hopefully agree. By what's the date by when this has to be submitted?
The testimony by the date of the committee hearing, the council committee hearing,
Which is,
that you're testifying to. So there's different dates.
are we testifying in person, Zoom? How's it? Or are we just submitting testimony?
It could be submitted. It could be submitted in writing, or you could do it at the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna do that offline.
Okay.
That's gonna take up some time. Dawn, you had a question or old hand?
I was actually just saying, I think tomorrow we might get a link and know when the hearings are gonna happen, but I definitely have to speak up this year about this, the direction that we're moving in terms of transportation equity. But I might have to do that as an individual. I put it in the chat.
That's fine. Thank you. But any other comments that you'd like to add? Well, we're always looking forward to that. As a whole, as a group. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us on this very long night. We almost made it to 10 o'clock, but it was great work, particularly with the district attorneys. We found great information, everything else. As always, I appreciate you being here. And I believe that was the end of our agenda.
Just one last thing, Jose. I put up the calendar with some of the committees that correlate to your committee. So the Committee on Public Safety meets on the 18th. Committee on Transportation meets on the 16th. I'll send the link to the rest of them, but those are a couple.
18th and 16th, so we got just a few days. 16 for transportation. And 18 for public safety. Perfect, thank you. All right, Angel, thank you. Thank you all for being here. Dawn, you had your hand raised from before, or you?
I'm so sorry. I'm done.
Okay, no worries.
Old
I just want to
hand.
make sure. Thank you all for being here. Please, everyone, have a good night. I appreciate all the work you've done for our community. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.